Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by gileboy on Wattpad. Now let's start. Deku POV. One day Deku was sitting in class studying while 𝐈𝐧𝐻 was asleep in his sleeping bag. The whole class was quiet because we could not wake up 𝐈𝐧𝐻 because last time they did that they got detention for a mouth and kicked myheroacademia out for class 1A 27 3-person POV. It was clam until Bakugo got up and looked at Deku and yelled, "You nerd, no one cares about you. I don't even know why you are still here. Listen to me when I says take a swan dive off the roof." 𝐈𝐧𝐻 woke up and heard the last bit. But before he could say anything, Bakugo yells, "You can do 𝐻𝗔 to me, nerd. You can't beat me. You poplar can't even beat someone from class 1B 16." 𝐈𝐧𝐻 and the whole class was stunned by what Bakugo said. Next thing they knew, Bakugo blew up Deku and his studies. It took for Deku shirt and make him bleed a bit. Then other pro heroes heard and started to come over. Then Deku get up and brush himself off and looks at him and say, "Why?" 𝐈𝐧𝐻 turn on his quirk. Then Bakugo yell, "Turn off that useless quirk for your 𝐈𝐧𝐻." 24. The class just looked shocked that he said that. By then Midnight, All Might and ectoplasm 𝐈𝐧𝐻 eyes hurt too much, so he turned it off and Bakugo make another explosion at Deku, and Midnight was about to put them to sleep, but Deku just looks and says, "No yet." For Deku get up while Might says, "Class 1A, may you all please leave the room while we figure this out." Bakugo was about to make another explosion, but Deku guard Bakugo arm and 𝗵𝗵𝗏. Bakugo yell in pain, "UF. Nerd, you think you're better than me." 26. All Might taken back that Deku just broke his arm without even turning on his quirk, while everyone but 𝐈𝐧𝐻 think, "Did he samp his arm?" While 𝐈𝐧𝐻 think, "Oh, you made him samp." Bakugo 𝗬𝗵𝗀. 18. PS Class 1A is just behind the teacher. They can see everything that happened to Deku. Yell, "I am so sick for you, Deku. That Deku this I am sick for it. I thought after I got into UA you would stop bullying me, but no, you just need to keep going on your little angry issues, don't you?" 3. Everyone think Bakugo bullied Deku. The one that was taken back the most was All Might, but his son figure / the person he gave one for all was bullied but so happy. While this is happening, Nizu is looking though Deku old flies while watching the cameras in class 1A. Bakugo yell, "You think I have anger issues, Deku?" Deku yells while turn on 1 for all to 5%. Angry issues, it is F more than that. Bakugo, you treat everyone like they sh to you. Yell all the time, you act like you are better than all for us when you're F not. Bakugo yells, "You wanna go UF?" Before Bakugo could finish, Deku hit him in the face and sent him going though the wall. Deku yells, "Call me a nerd one more time, I F dare you." 28. Bakugo was passed out, but Deku walk over to him and grab him by the shirt, but before he could hit him, All Might says in a soft clam voice, "Young Midoriya, he is out, not need to hurt him anymore." Deku drop him and says, "F I am sorry, I don't know what came over me, it just he pissed me off too much, he yells at me all the time." All Might walk over and just hug him while 𝐈𝐧𝐻 tell class 1A to got back to the dorms and take the day off, and me tell ectoplasm to take Bakugo to 𝗓𝗏𝗏 recovery girl. Then 𝐈𝐧𝐻 looks at his phone and it was a message from Nizu. Says, "Bring All Might and Deku to my room please." 𝗓𝐧𝐻 sigh and says, "Deku and All Might, we need to go and see Nizu." Deku just nod and break the hug with Deku. Then remember, he don't have a shirt off and he says, "Wow, young Midoriya, you are rip." 30. Midnight look down and have a bleeding nose while 𝗓𝗏𝗏 look and says, "Wow, how have I not seen that before?" Deku just looks and says, "Oh, well, I can life 1,000 kilograms without my quirk and run 100 kilometers without a sweat." Night pass out, but Might just get her and says, "Wow, I didn't expect that." All Might just blinks and says, Anyway, we need to go to Nizu office." 𝗓𝗏𝗏 says, "Yeah, and Mike take her and take our please." 17. 𝗓𝗏𝗏, All Might and Deku all go to Nizu office. They all walk in and Nizu sat happily. "Oh yeah, you're here now, we can talk." Deku glups while sitting down, "Sir, if I am going to get kick out for you, can I tell my friends myself?" Nizu, All Might and 𝗓𝗏𝗏 all start laughing. Nizu clam down and says, "Do you really think you are going to kick? You are the one getting kick out." 𝗓𝗏𝗏 clam down and says, "Yeah, problem child, without you I wouldn't got rid for everyone in your class by now, but you're like glue, without you the class would be a mess." They good kid, but they just need a leader. It was out for 3 people, you, Bakugo and Todoroki, but as you know Bakugo is the worst. Todoroki is a good option, but he like doing on your own. Then 𝗓𝗏𝗏 punch Deku arm softly and Deku says, "So what you're saying is that I am he class leader?" All Might clam down and says, yes, and all the teacher know this, and we all know you will break every bone in your body for them, even at RG get angry at you and me, but not just for your class but Class 1B all the other years the teachers even if that they tell you not to you would save everyone you could. 7 Aizawa giggles and says, that why we want to send everyone in your class and the big three Eri All Might and me expect Bakugo on a vacation to Australia because for you and we need a break from the 𝐿𝑜V and after what you did to save Eri I think you deserve it. 20 Deku in Socked says, sir I don't know what you were talking about. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 smiles and says, oh yes the class have not seen you versus overhaul now have they? Deku smiles and says, oh no and thank God we. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 cut him off and says, we have a video for you versus overhaul let go. Deku goes froze and All Might says, I have not seen this fight this should be good. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 Deku All Might and Aizawa walk into class 1A dorms 𝗬𝗧𝗏. Deku-kun are you okay? Deku nod and 𝗫𝐬𝐴 says happily. It all okay Deku is Nick getting kick out neither is Bakugo because Deku what to keep him here anyways we are here to see me for Deku fights then. We will talk about what you all will be doing next month. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 jump off for Aizawa and turn on the TV then everyone sit down then is started one not my video the class look at Deku and Kree yelled, that was so manly dude, while all the girls had a blush on then thinking, wow he is so cute and CC. Aizawa see them all blush and giggles then before saying, you did good problem child and you always do. Denki looks at him and says, wow you can kill all for us if you what? Deku smiles and says, and that was only 100% and I can go to 1,000,000%. The class glups and Todoroki says, well next UA sport day remind me to sundered. The whole class noted. Deku was worried and says, guys I am only at 8% clam down the only reason I could go to 100% is because for Eri. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 smiles happily then says, now that you've seen that I would like to say that all for you in this room including the big three and Eri and I think Aizawa is being missed joke. Aizawa blushes a little and says, yeah she is. 11 Ishido. Look at him and says, do I smell love? Aizawa look at her and says, and I know who you like so don't give me that and that go for all the girls. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 blinks and say, you will be taking this week off to get ready. Aizawa say smiling, you should all thank 𝗕𝗶𝗶𝗏 without him you would not be here there would be no class 1A and the vacation would not happen without him too. Deku look at Aizawa like why would you do that he turn around to see everyone blowing and saying, thank you, Deku Aina. Blushing mess and says, and no yohi need to do that. All the class yells, thank you. Aizawa walk over and wipers in his ear, what did I say you are the leader? 𝗫𝐬𝐴 jump onto Aizawa and walk out then All Might stand up and says, young Midoriya can we talk outside? Deku nod and walk with All Might then All Might says, thank you. All Might hug him while Deku says, what? All Might let go and says, that video for you saving Eri show me that everything I knew was true and it shows your class that they are in safe hands. Deku smiles and says, thank you teacher. All Might smiles and says, we are going to dinner just me you and your mum she need to know how strong her boy have gown. Deku smiles and says, I will see with mum but I think she free most nights. All Might says happily, you go and get ready and I will make dinner plans for us. Deku hug him and says, thank you dad. Deku break the hug and says, bye. Deku run off thinking, Onjai called All Might my dad on. All Might stunned by what he said think. Inko is not gonna to be happy she going to kick my butt and poplar Deku. 15 All Might excellentko Aizawa x joke 38 𝗫𝐬𝐴 and Aizawa walk back to 𝗫𝐬𝐴 office 𝗫𝐬𝐴 sit and says, well now let get the plan booked. Midnight kick down the door and says, can I go to Australia with class 1A? Aizawa just look at 𝗫𝐬𝐴 and 𝗫𝐬𝐴 smiles and says, yes you may. Midnight walk out saying, good. Aizawa just look at him and says, 𝗕𝗶𝗏. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 smiles and says, well I wanted they to be our more teachers so Midnight plus she like Deku. Aizawa giggles and says, this should be good. Aizawa walk out. And 𝗫𝐬𝐴 says, this will be fine everything should be all fine plus Australia is safe. Deku walk into his room and sigh then says, I need sleep I am tired after I snap at him but it felt good like not the angry the getting it off my chest after all these years I stood up to myself and I feel happy now. Deku take off his shirt and pants and just leave his boxers on and lay on his bed meanwhile Ishido says while smiles, we need to do something for Deku he help us every day can we please do something from him? Ida says while doing his arm chopping thing. I agree he mean a lot to us. Momo said calm and quiet. I agree he mean a lot to his family. Sato out his head up and says, I can make him a cake if you would like. Momo nod and says, Sato, you can make him a cake, and Kirishima, a Shido. Kaminari and Aoyama can set up the place, Jiro can make a music playlist, the rest act like nothing is happening me, and Lita will make sure it doesn't blow up. All Might on the phone in his office. All Might says sacred, hi Linko, Inko on the overline. Oh hi why did you call? All Might now sweating bullets. Okay Linko don't get mad, Inko says in an angry tone. What did you do? If our baby is hurt you're a dead man. All Might says sacred. Well you see deku-snaps at Bakugo and after that he call me dad after I invite you and him out for dinner. Inko sigh and says angrily. Well when you come back you are going to be in pain but does he know? All Might sigh and says, I know and no I don't know. But when you free, Inko sigh and says, as you know I am free every night so how about Friday night? All Might says, okay and in a week time me and the class is going to Australia for a month. Inko smiles and says, oh that fine I know that our son is responsible so it should be fine. All Might nod grateful and says, okay love you Linko see you Friday. Inko says anger, yeah don't be late. All Might says sacred, I won't buy my love. Inko says happy. By lovely. 5 All Might start crying under his desk. 11 Meanwhile Deku POV I am putting the dream here for some reason sudden in the afternoon and Deku in boxers and not mine Todoroki walk in worried and says, what happened? Deku breath heavy and says, I huff don't huff no huff. Todoroki look at him and says, you good? Deku get his breath and says, yeah I am good I just need to talk to All Might. Todoroki look confused and says, why? Deku put on a shirt and a pair for shorts and says, I just need to. No Todoroki ships Todoroki walk out with Deku and Deku says, I will be this tonight. Todoroki look and says, that is a long talk. Deku smiles and says, oh not after the talk with All Might I am going to badly sit Eri and Koda. Todoroki look confused and says, okay see you later and what do I tell people? Deku rub his back for his head. Just tell them I am out and you don't know anything about the boom okay? Todoroki nod. And says, okay to easy I'm going to go and eat sober now. Deku think of course. Then says, okay bye Todoroki. Todoroki turn around and says, bye. Then think, they write he is a leader. 10 While going downstairs and start calling Aizawa after getting down Aizawa pick and says, why are you calling me problem child? Deku giggles sacred and then says, well I was having a nap and my quirk turned on and my room kind blew up. Aizawa sigh and says, how bad? Deku says happily, oh only a window. Aizawa says not happening but not mad. Okay not too bad who know. Deku sigh in a happy tone and says, only Todoroki. Aizawa says confused, okay problem child where are you going it sounds like you're walking. Deku says happily, oh I need to babysit Eri and Koda today. Aizawa says happy, oh yeah forgot about that and it is okay I will be fixed by the time you get back tonight. Deku says happily, thank you sir talk to you later. Aizawa hang up and think, this kid is going to kill me. 1 Deku walk into All Might office and hear him crying and say, All Might are and you crying? All Might get up and says, oh I was so proud that you came so far from the first time. Deku smiles and sit down and says, thank you All Might but did you have any dreams to do with one for all? I'm getting tired for saying All Might says confidence. No never had dreams what was it about? After saying what happened in his dream blink and says, that never happened to me or my. Deku looked down and says, I saw her. Nana she was they next to me it was all the dead user of one for all. Look and says, I don't know what to because I have not had a dream at all with one for all every. Deku nod and look up and says, if you can talk her Nana I am sorry. In Deku head Nana says, tell him not to be sorry. First user, tell him he did good. Deku shake his head and says, Nana says not to be sorry and the one user says that you did good. Says worried, are you okay? Deku says worried, I don't know I think they all. In my head, Nana says happily, we are but we will nor make you go crazy we will only talk when you're in a fight or we are making a sassy comment to you. Deku says worried, yep they in my head all for them are I think, all for the user for one for all says, yep. Deku mid and says, yep all in my head. Asking worried, why are they talking to you? Hi all the user are going to be in Deku head Nana says happily. Well says we you are going to get all for our quirks except the ones you already have. Deku sigh and says worried and confused, I am getting all for your quirks. Says you're getting they quick. Deku says worried, I think so. Nana says, wow you picked one just like you didn't you hun. Deku says confused, what do you mean? Says, what do you mean? Nana sigh and says, Okay, all you need to know is that you get 5 new quirks because you have the first 2 and don't have one. Deku look up and says, I'm getting 5 more quirks. Look at him worried and says, they are. Cannot hear here he is asking deku-snaps and says, well the first one is float my quirk it is simple you float. Deku says wired out, I get float, 6 user. Second is Grim Reaper it makes someone feel death but they don't die, Deku. Glops and says, Grim Reaper. 5 user says, Fireball I can make fire in my hand and send it out. Deku says still confused, Fireball. 4 user says happily, I have anger issues it make you angry but you don't lose you stamina. Deku worrying, anger issues, Glops and says, well the last one. 3 user says, oh yes my quirk I can turn into a wolf and it is called werewolf. Deku smiles and says, and werewolf. Nod and says, and how are you going to get them? Nana says happily, oh at night your last dream was meant to talk but we blew up your room. Deku sigh and says, I think in my dreams. Says worried, that is a lot for time training. Deku says happily, it will be fine so when are we going to dinner? Say happily, Friday is good for your mum. Nana says confused, who your mother? Deku in his head, Inko. Nana started lose her tea and Deku say, why is Nana laugh in my head? Freezing and says, Nana I swear to God. Deku start thinking while Nana say, oh my god I can't believe he actually did it. Deku look at and say, what did he do Nana? 1 user sigh and says, Nana no I want him to find out from him. Nana sigh and says, fine you know fun. 1 user 1 open door and says, I am sorry about her kid we will be in the back. Door shoots and Deku says, well I guess I am not getting anything from them anyway I need to go and babysit. Smiles and says, okay my boy you go and babysit I will see you later. Deku leaves and get on his phone and text Inko. Says, we need to tell him. Inko look inside then text, do you mean we need to tell him or you told him? Says, tell I am careful then it comes to stuff like this. Inko text, only if you were as careful when you were a hero. Text, hey but I am just saying after we tell him we can do father and son time in Australia. Inko text and says, fine but Friday we tell him. Text, that fine by Inko and love you. Inko text, love you to by 2 Deku walk into the 3-year dorm and he hear Eri and says, is that my little son ball I hear? Eri run and says, Sir Deku. Mirio walk up and says, hi you here to pick her up? Deku smiles and says, yeah then I'm going to wild PP cat place for Kota too. Tamaki smiles and says, another kid wow you are good at this. Hato smile and says, yeah you would be a good dad one day. Deku blush a little bit and says, you really think so? Mirio trying not to laugh says, oh and thank you for the trip to Australia. Deku smiles and says, oh it is nothing but me and Eri here need to go. Eri smiles and says, yeah let go bye. Deku smiles and says, bye you 3. Deku and Eri leave 3 a dorm and Mirio start laughing then Tamaki says, he would be a good father huh? Mario now on the ground laughing Hato think and blush madly, I didn't mean it like that you too? Mario now laying down getting his beef back then Tamaki says, sure because if I weren't Wong you like him. Mario get up and says, he is right maybe he like you? Nizu in his office says, oh my dear boy how are you going to pull of getting every girl that like you not fight one another ha? Nizu think then says, they one way he can get away with it and that will be interesting. I am using the Wild PP Cat's hero's name because why not? Deku walk to the door of the Wild PP Cat's base with Eri in his arm and knocks and then Mandalay open the door says, hi Deku I am so glad to see you and who is this cute in your arms? Eri smile and says, I am Eri Mr. Deku here saved me. Mandalay looks at Deku and says, oh that is so nice for you Eri why don't you go and meet Kota? Eri looks scared and Deku smiles and says, Eri he will be nice I promise be strong. Deku places Eri down and says, oh okay Mr. Deku are you leavening me? Deku smiles and says, of course not I just want you to meet Kota before I come so you get to know me some more. Eri nod and says, okay Mr. Deku. Eri walk off and Mandalay giggles and says, you and kid. Deku rub the back for his head while saying, what can I say? Mandalay hit him over the head says, you can says sorry for making us sacred. Deku walk into the kitchen and says, I am sorry I didn't know you saw that. Picks Bob run up and says, of course we saw for fight it was so cool and CC Ragdoll pick up a water gun and shoot her with it saying, sorry about her she wired. Picks Bob start yelling at Ragdoll start shooting her again while Mandalay tired to clam her down and Deku walk over to Tiger and says, Are they always do this? Tiger nod and says, "Saya, should I stop them?" Deku smiles and says, "Later I want to see how 𝗂𝐲 and 𝐸𝐽 and going." Tiger nod and says, "Oh, and we told 𝗂𝐲 what happened to 𝐸𝐽 and he understand." Deku nod and says, "Thank you." Tiger and Deku walk in and see I am using the 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗏𝐻's hero's name because why not? Deku walk to the door of the 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗏's base with 𝗸𝐽 in his arm and knocks, and then 𝗵𝗲𝗍 open the door says, "Hi Deku, I am so glad to see you. And who is this cute inyo one? Not my pick." Tiger try not to laugh while Deku take a picture and send it to the parents group aka 𝐬𝗲𝗍. All the 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗏, the big three, Miss Joke and Deku joke text, "Oh my god yes 𝐬𝗲𝗍, have you seen 𝐬𝗲𝗍?" text, "𝗕𝗶𝗍𝗵𝗙 can I kill him?" 𝗕𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗙 the 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗏's joke text, "He is not really going to kill him." Deku text, "Please don't, I saved him." 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗶 text, "That is so cute." Ooh, ragdoll text, "Aw 𝗂𝐲 have a crush." 𝐬𝗲𝗍 text, the 𝐎𝐻𝐻𝗫 joke. Text, "I am sorry about him." One Tiger look at his phone and says, "I think 𝐬𝗲𝗍 is going to kill him." Deku smiles and says, "Oh, he won't, I think." 𝗂𝐲 look up to see Tiger and Deku, then he says, "How long were you they for?" Tiger smiles and says, "Oh, not long kid." Tiger wink and 𝗂𝐲 get embarrassed, then 𝗸𝐽 smiles and says, "How do you know Mr. Deku?" 𝗂𝐲 look confused and says, "Oh well, he saved me." 𝗸𝐽 look down a little and says, "Oh, I am sorry if I ask some bad." 𝗂𝐲 smiles and says, "It is okay. If I didn't meet him I wouldn't for meet you." Tiger and Deku think, "Smooth much?" The 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗏s walk in and 𝗸𝐽 says, "I am glad I meet you." To 𝗂𝐲, every saw 𝗂𝐲 blushes madly more than Deku when he talked to a girl, and 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗶 says, 𝗕𝗁𝗂𝐲, do you like her?" 𝗂𝐲 look at her and says, "Is she nice to talk with?" The girls nod and Tiger says, "Anyways we need to go now," and 𝗂𝐲, "Be nice." 𝗂𝐲 look away and says, "I will, don't worry." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 nod and says, "Okay, make sure he is in bed by 6. Don't want him tired for tomorrow." Deku smiles and says, "Okay, I sure will." 𝗂𝐲 says, annoyed but confused, "Why do I need to go to the shops again?" 𝗵𝗲𝗍 says, "Happily, the 𝗲𝗂 want us to go away for a month to Australia." Deku look and says, "You're coming with us?" Ragdoll look confused and says, "What do you mean?" Deku says, worried and happy, "I'm class 1A with the big three, 𝗸𝐽, 𝐬𝗲𝗍, Miss Joke, Midnight and All Might are going to Australia for a month." 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗶 look and yells, One 𝗲𝗂 sighting in his chair says, "I am so dead but he will thank me later." Two 𝗵𝗲𝗍 sigh and says, "I guess we are all going together then." Ragdoll, 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗶 and 𝗵𝗲𝗍 think, "That mean we get to see you in tight swim shorts, nice." Tiger think, "Oh no, I wonder how the kid will go." "He will be fine." Deku rub the back for his head and says, "I guess so, but you guys need to go, I got them." 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗶 smiles and says, "We will see you later." 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗶 wink and Ragdoll says, walking out, "You are 30." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 sigh and says, "I am sorry about then." Deku wave it off and says, "It is fine, see you later." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 walk out and Tiger says, "If you want something to drink, go to my room." Deku sigh and says, "Really?" Tiger says while walking out, "Yep, drink up, just not too much." Tiger close the door and Deku look at both for then and he say, "Wanna watch a movie?" 𝗂𝐲 says, "Happily." "Sure, why not?" 𝗸𝗽 says, "Happily." "Yay, movie." Deku smiles and says, "Okay, what movie?" 𝗂𝗲 smiles and says, "Whatever, 𝗸𝗽, what I don't mind." 𝗸𝗽 smiles and says, "Okay, 𝗂𝗲, how about Frozen, you good with that?" 𝗂𝗲 smile and says, "Yeah, fine by me." Deku smiles and says, "Okay, Frozen it is." Halfway though the movie, 𝗸𝗽 and 𝗂𝗲 fell asleep and 𝗸𝗽 it on his lap and Deku take a pic and send it to parents group 𝐬𝗲𝗍 text, "I am not happy about it but is cute." Joke text, "I told you he had a 𝗕𝗏𝗏." Tiger text, "Aw cute." Mario text, "I think you killed Tamaki and 𝗧𝗏𝗄." Deku text, "Oh no." Two Deku pick them up and put them in bed together. Shushing face, shushing face, shushing face, don't tell 𝗬𝗏𝗍. After a while the 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗏s came back and he took 𝗸𝗽 who was passed out and took her back to the big three. Then he stood in front for the class 1A from 4. Deku think, "Well, what a day." Nana says, "You can say that again." Deku gets sacred and says, "Oh, it is just you, I thought he lock you up." Nana says happily, "Yeah, nah, that not fun." Deku start to walk up to the common room and he hear nothing. Deku get closer to the door and he hear nothing, so he thought, what if the love came and they here waiting for me just in case. Deku turn on 1 for all to 5% and kick the door down, then hear, "Thank you, Deku." Deku almost perch but stop and turned his cryak off and says, "Guys, what did you do?" Deku look around and see the common room fill with class 1A, the big three, the teacher May Miss Joke and the teachers 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗏, which was Deku theme, and 𝐬𝗏𝗍 look at him and says, We are saying thank you for all you have done for us. Deku was confused and says, I have done nothing for anyone. Aizawa look at him and says, Deku really you going to play this game? You save class 1A a lot more times. Then I can count even on the first day you saved them from me kicking them out. You saved the WVC help all for the teachers saving Miss Joke class getting airy. You have done so much for us. We what to says thank you. Deku look around at everyone and says, you guy you didn't need to do this for me, like don't get me wrong, this is great, but I am just doing what is right. Aizawa sigh and says, we all know you push yourself, like on the first day you showed me up on the ball throwing, you didn't do that. You all would be kick out, so thank you, because over time I starting to actually like the class. Mike and Midnight look and says, what you like a class? My god, what have you kids done to him? Aizawa smiles and says, they gave me hope for the future. Class 1A look at him and all the class yells, he does care for us. The big three smiles and says, Deku, you even saved us. If you didn't stop Overhaul we might for died, but you stop him and saved us. Deku put his hand on the back for his head and says, guys, you know I was just doing that right. Tiger smiles and says, you even saved the wild PP cats at the training camp, and more important Koda. Deku smiles and says, oh, that was not hard. 𝗎𝗓 look at him and says, you almost died. Everyone yells, what? Deku laughing Sacred says, guys, I am fine. Aizawa says, pissed off and worried, why didn't you tell me? Deku smiles and says, was not important. And 𝗎𝗓, how do you know? 𝗎𝗓 smiles and says, same way it got the overhaul video. Deku sigh and says, okay, so we going to show everyone, or? 𝗎𝗓 cut him off and says, oh yes, everyone sit down. Everyone sit down, and Deku worried sit at the back away from Aizawa and then it starts playing Deli Glups and says, before anyone says anything I was 100% in control for the fight. Aizawa mid and turn in his quick says, Deku, the hell where you think you almost died? Deku says happily, almost I didn't, I almost. Madara sigh and says, so after you almost died Yoi came and saved me and Tiger then. Some for you classmates. Deku nod and says, yep, sounds about right. 𝐴𝐴𝐵 smiles and says, when we get back I am making you Terran 2 times harder. Deku nod and says, fair. 𝗓 yells happily, that was so manly, but why didn't you come and get help? Deku smiles and say, well I couldn't, I knew the pro were dealing with other LOV members and that class 1A and B was popular dish dealing with other think. 𝗎𝗓 smiles and says, and you made the right call, there was no point being him though. The Frost while injured and with a child you would ending up hurting more people. Deku smiles and says, thank you sir. Momo smile and says, okay, now that we are done that we can party. Nothing important happened at the party 3 after everyone went home or to their dome. Deku was about to go to his dome and call him outside. Deku walk outside and says, 𝗓𝗄, you want to see me? 𝗓𝗄 hugged him and start crying while says, why? Deku hug him back says, it was the right thing to do. 𝗓𝗄 smile and says, I know. But you worry me all the time with your bones, just try and not do any for that now 1 inch. Deku break the hug and says, I promise him I will. 𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, now you need sleep young man. Deku smiles and says, okay, I will sleep night. 𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, night young Deku. Deku walk into his dorm and think, I should do something for everyone to thank everyone. I should start with my song All Might would like, oh I got it. Not one for these songs are mine, and when it is a girl sing just. Think it is Deku smile and says, okay song yes that one. Deku says happily, yes should be good for him now for 𝗓𝗓 I think this song should be good for him. Deku says happily, yeah he would like that now Todoroki, oh I know just to mess with me. Deku laugh and says, yep perfect now Lita, oh I know. Deku laughter his butt off and says, yep he going to kill me but it is worth it now. 𝗓 turn yeah that is a nice song for him. Deku nod and says, wow I am getting though these. Fast anyway now 𝗵𝗃𝐻 turn and I know the song fro him. Deku nod and says, now Momo I hope she doesn't take this the wrong way. Deku sigh and says, I am dead might as well do the same with the other girls you are now Denki yep that one. Deku nod and says, now Aizawa yes I know he care but still. Deku smiles and says, well now it is Uraraka turn yeah that song. Deku smiles saying, she is the best for me anyways now Koda turn yeah he need to know. Deku smiles and says, I hope he does now show to turn oh yes that song. Deku smiles them says, he should be good with that now the Mirio song yes. Deku laughing then says, yep perfect now Midnight oh my god I might die but yes. Deku worried then says, I am going to die but worth it now 𝗬𝗓 why not? Deku sigh and says, I hope he like it now Sato song scary but him. Deku giggles and sat. Hope I don't worry him now the one I am sacred for 𝗔𝗂𝘁𝗵𝗲 oh yeah, deku think, hey Nana does it sound like I like the girls, Nana says happily, oh god yes it sounds like you love them, deku think, keep on going down that road, Nana says happily, might as well, deku says happily, I feel like 𝗧𝗏 like rap so how about this one, deku smiles and says, that was good I think now Mina how about this one, deku smiles and says, wow this is wired as all hell anyway now 𝐎𝐻𝐸𝐽𝐻 how about that one, Nana sigh and says, could be worse, deku sigh and says, I feel so wired about doing this what if they think I'm a creep, Nana says happily, if I could slap you I would you are doing fine kid, deku smiles and think, thank Nana, Nana says. Happily, no worries now I think you should do yoga next, deku says, okay sound good oh my god yes this is him, deku smiles and says, well ta oh I know, deku sigh and says, okay a few more then I am done 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗃 oh yes that sing she will kill me, deku giggles and says, now I need to plan my own death and make another song for ragdoll yeah sure, deku smiles and says, now Mandalay maybe this song, deku smiles and says, now Tiger yep perfect for him, deku smiles and says, now. Miss Joke yep sounds like her, deku sigh and says, now mayhem might as well, deku think and says, one more 𝗎𝗎𝗢𝗓 yes that one, not one for these songs are mine all are other people's songs deku says happily and tired, I am done but now I need to burn all the CDs that should be done my tomorrow, deku get dressed into a t-shirt and boxes go to sleep then wake up to it is Tuesday his door being kicked in but Kree and yells, deku bro get up we are going to the mall, deku say half asleep, yay I am up, Kree say happily while punching down the door and walking in, come on bro let go, Aizawa come in sighing then say, great I need to fix a door and deku need to put some pants on, deku sit up and says, can someone throw me some pants, Kree pick up some jeans and throw them and deku put them on saying, okay I am ready to go, deku walk down and see all the boys in the common room and Denki says, all right let go, at the mall they slip into groups and deku is with Kree, Denki and Lita. Kree says happily, yeah let go this is going to be fun, deku smiles and says, okay let go before something happens and Lita chill out everything fine, Lita look and says, fine only because they are not too many rules here, deku smiles and says, and we are going to do anyway, Lita sigh and say, I know sadly, Sudi night deku sit on his bed and says, well I am tired but I need to babysit Eri and Koda again. Eri x Koda but don't tell Dadazoa deku look at his music and think, Nana when should I give it to them, Nana says happily, tonight and you aren't giving them anything you're tapping the CDs to the door and running away, one user says, she got a point, deku thin, yeah you're right but do you want me to give it to them face to face then they would want to play it in front for me and I can't do that with the girls, Lita knocks on his door and says, deku Mr. Aizawa what to see the class, deku walk out and says, okay let go, deku and Lita walk down and Aizawa says, now that we are all here. Miss Joke is becoming a teacher I know it is going to be annoying, Miss Joke and says, annoying bit mean let date, deku smiles and says, he would love to, Aizawa look at him and back at her and Aizawa yell, no oh god no I would never, deku smiles and says, then why are you blushing so hard sir, Aizawa look at him and says, I am not blushing problem child, Miss Joke is out for it AMD deku smiles and says, come on help your girlfriend, Aizawa look around and says, what do you mean, Aizawa look down and yells, oh my god we kill her, Miss Joke mumbles something and deku says, no she alive just out for it, Aizawa sigh and says, don't you have kids to babysit problem child, deku smiles and says, yep and I will come to your office later, Aizawa smiles and says, good because I will drag you but to my office, deku smiles and says, I know, deku leaves and the whole class starts laughing and Aizawa turn on it quirk and yells, stop laughing, Aizawa blushing and put Miss Joke on his shoulder. And think, problem child my god you are smart, deku knock on the WBC home again and 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗆 get the door and says, oh hey you here to babysit, deku nod and says, yep Eri really what to see Koda, Eri smiles and says, yay I get to see Koda, deku put Eri down and Koda come to the door and Eri hug him says, yay hi Koda how are you, Koda blush a little and says, hi Eri I am good how about you, Eri smiles and says, I am good now that I can see you, deku think, god Eri you are smooth, 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗆. Think, Eri are you trying to get him hard, deku smiles and says, why don't you two go and pick movie and Eri make sure to says hi, Eri nod and says, I will Mr. Deku let go Koda, deku sigh and says, you think hey going to date when they older, 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 smiles and says, "Oh God, yes, let go and see the other, then we will go." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 and Deku walk in and Deku says, "Hi, how it going?" Ragdoll smiles and says, "Good, we just saw the young lovebirds walk past." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 smiles and says, "Yeah, they so cute. Oh, and Deku, we are going to be late, you can stay here tonight if yo what." Deku smiles and says, "Oh, that fine, but I need to go back to you, otherwise I would be in carp with 𝐈𝐧𝐿 of not coming back, and I need to do early morning training tomorrow." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 nod and says, "Very well, we will be fine tomorrow and Friday night because plot." 𝗧𝗏𝗧 and says, "Will you be fine to get back to you? You will be walking, right?" Deku nod and says, "Yeah, it is not too far." 𝗧𝗏 get up and pay him on the shoulder says, "I will drive you back and we need to get dressed." Deku says confused, "I will be fine, what time will you even be back?" 𝗧𝗏 smiles and says, 3 a.m. Deku look and says, 3 a.m. what are you doing? Ragdoll says worried, "Well, drag rings and gang meetups, you know, the same for every Wednesday." 𝗧𝗏 leaves sighs and 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 says, "Just get your guns and knife ready." Ragdoll and 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 leaves and 𝗵𝗲𝗍 sigh and says, "I am sorry about them, but I need to get dressed, we will come," and says bye to the kids and you. 5 Deku nod and walk to 𝗂𝐻𝗫 and 𝐒𝐻𝐈 and 𝗂𝐻𝗫 saying, "You look pretty, 𝗎𝐻𝐈." 𝗎𝐻𝐈 says happily, "You look pretty" to 𝗂𝐻𝗫. Deku sit down and says, "What movie are we watching?" 𝗎𝐻𝐈 says happily, "𝗂𝐻𝗫 pick Moana, Mr. Deku." Deku look happily and says, "Okay, you keep on watching, I will start making dinner." 𝗂𝐻𝗫 look at him and says, "Okay, you do that." Deku go to the kitchen and as he does, 𝗧𝗏 walk in and says, "The main reason you're going back to UA with me driving you is because, as you said, not far and you need to get back a bit early." Deku sigh in defeat and says, "Fine, you win." 𝗧𝗏 pat him in the back and says, "Good, so what you making?" Deku says, "Not sure. Maybe soba or homemade pizza." 𝗧𝗏 look and says, "Soba, I don't want the kids to make pizza." Deku think for a sec, them say, "Good point, that would be a mess." 𝗧𝗏 nod and says, "Really, you don't say?" Ragdoll come out and says, "Leave the kid alone." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 come behind her and says, "More like a men." Deku blush little and Ragdoll look at her and says, "Why do you do this, 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵? He is only 16. 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 smiles and says, "I good-looking 16-year-old. 𝗵𝗲𝗍 come behind her and says, "Stop it, you going to kill him." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 says sassy, "You both know I am right." 𝗧𝗏 sigh and says, "Okay, let's says bye to the kids." They all walk in and 𝗵𝗲𝗍 says, "𝗂𝐻𝗫, we are going now." 𝗂𝐻𝗫 sigh and says, "Bye." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 kiss him on the cheek and says, "Be good to 𝗎𝗏𝗍 and Deku please." Ragdoll kiss him on the cheek and says, "We will be back later tonight." 𝗧𝗏 pat him on the head and says, "See ya, kiddo." 𝗂𝐻𝗫 clean his cheek and says, Okay, see you guys later." Deku walk to the door with them and says, "They will be asleep before you get home." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 says, "I hope you're awake when we come back." Ragdoll sigh and says, "You're 30, get in the car now." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 and Ragdoll get in the car, then 𝗵𝗲𝗍 sigh and says, "Why, 𝗧𝗏, you got this." 𝗧𝗏 nod and 𝗵𝗲𝗍 get in the car. 𝗧𝗏 sigh and says, "I am sorry about them, but we need to go." Deku waves off and says, "It is fine, don't worry, go, I got them." 𝗧𝗏 smiles and says, "Okay, same rule as last time." Deku roll his eye and says, "Got it, now go." 𝗧𝗏 get in and says, "All 3 for you need to stop trying to get with him." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 look at him and says, "I don't like him, it mainly 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵." 𝗧𝗏 smiles and says, "No, I heard you talk at night." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 says worried, "See?" Ragdoll look at her and say, "You're meant help me with 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 here." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 smiles and says, "I am sorry that he is cute as hell." 𝗧𝗏 sigh and says, "You can't talk, Ragdoll, you tried to ask him out in the mirror." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 and 𝗵𝗲𝗍 says, "You like him?" Ragdoll says, "Hey, fine, I do." 𝗧𝗏 sigh and says, "Now I am disappointed in all 3 for you." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 look down and says, "Who get him?" 𝗧𝗏 sigh and says, "You do know that all the girls in his class like him and Midnight, so good luck." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 smiles and says, "I can give." 𝗧𝗏 turn around and says, "Finish that sentence, I dare you." 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵 smiles and say, "The best F for his life." The whole car go quiet and 𝗧𝗏 says in a wired out and annoyed tone, Why do you do this, Pix?" Ragdoll says, "Not if I do first." 𝗵𝗲𝗍 says, "I am going to F him first." 𝗧𝗏 look down and says, "Stop talking, all 3 for you." 6 little did they know they would all bang him, LOL. 6 Deku walk into where 𝗎𝗏𝗍 and 𝗂𝐻𝗫 are and he says, "Okay, now what kind for soba do you two?" What 𝗎𝗏𝗍 think and says, "Can I have beef please?" 𝗂𝐻𝗫 says happy, "I will have beef to please." Deku nod and says, "Okay, beef it is." Deku walk out and start making beef soba too. After dinner Deku pick up the plates and says, "Okay, one more movie then bed." 𝗂𝐻𝗫 and 𝗎𝗏𝗍 nod, then Deku think, I hope they go to sleep during the movie. Nana open a Coke in Deku head and says, yeah, I hope so to Deku sigh and think, how do you have a Coke? Nana says happily, to be honest I have no idea. One user says, okay get back in now. Nana says confused, but one user says, no but's in. The door open and Nana walk, and while the one user walk behind her, Deku says, okay you kid good, Koda and Eri, yes. Deku nod and think. Now time to put music in they rooms. Deku walk into they rooms and out music in they room, then come back to Eri and Koda asleep and Eri is on his lap, and Deku take a pic and send it to the group chat in 7 text. They so cute, Aizawa text. Take him to bed now, joke text. Leave them he just jealous that I am not like that with him, Aizawa text. Joke why would we be like that, Deku text. You know Aizawa Eri need a mother figure smirking face smirking face smirking face smirking face, Aizawa text. When you come back tonight you are in trouble, joke text. You know he right she need a mother and I don't think midnight is the best mother, Aizawa text. Can we not talk about this later, Deku text. Aizawa I won't be home until like 3:30ish, Aizawa text. Okay I will be passed out by then, so come back, someone from the big 3 will pick up Eri and you go back to your dorm. I will talk to you in the afternoon, Deku text. I will sir. At 3 not much happened in between. Tiger walk in and Deku says, everyone good, Tiger nod and say, yeah fine just tired from tonight. 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗵 walk in and say, thank you for watching them but I need sleep. Ragdoll walk in and says, yes same as what she said. Mandalay walk in and says, thank you so much for making them dinner for the kids. Deku nod and says, was no poplar now go you need sleep. Deku pick up Eri and Tiger says, okay let go to Tiger and Deku with Eri get in the car and Tiger says worried. Now I know you're young but all 3 for the girls like you. Deku look at him and says, are you joking with me or something? Tiger look at the road worried. No they all like you, so kid if they all ask you out say yes to the 3 for them. Deku look at him and says, so you want me to start a 𝐕𝗲𝗄? Tiger nod and says, technical yes because all the girls like you. Deku sigh and says, I don't think all the girls like me. Tiger giggles and says, you will find out in time and we are here, see you Monday. Deku get out and pick up Eri from the back and says, thank for the ride home Tiger. Deku walk into UA and get meet by AM and Nizu and Deku says, why are you 2 up? AM sigh and says, well I told Nizu about you little thing in your head. Nizu smiles and says, yes and I would like to know how are you with them. Deku smiles and says, fine it really only Nana and the one user that talked to me. AM says worried, how do they stop talk? Deku smiles and says, they go into the back for my mind. Nizu sigh and says, okay as long as they know making an issue. Deku smiles and says, okay. Sir now I will take Eri back and go to my dorm. AM says happily, I will come with you. Deku smiles and says, I will be fine it not far. Nizu smile and says, if that the case you can use your quirk to get they. Deku look at him and says, oh on it fine. AM smiles and says, use it my boy. Deku smiles and says, well if you are letting me use it then by see you in the morning. Deku turn on his quirk to 8% and start running with Eri and says, do you think he can do it? Nizu smiles and says, I have no doubt he will be able to win. Smiles and says, I trained him hard so he need this break. Nizu smiles and says, that he does. Look at Deku running to the dorm and says, he ever gave up on his class or anyone else, and most importantly he didn't give up on himself even when the whole world was against him. Nizu smiles and says, he has a heart for a loin, the will factor for you and the looks for God. Giggles to himself and says, a punch is hard for a diamond and the mind for you. Nizu jump onto AM and says, that he does and all without a quirk. AM start walk and says, sometimes I wonder if I pick right then I remember it is a little me and Inko. Nizu look confused and says, here kid. AM look at him and says, I thought I told you. Nizu look and says, no you have not, who else know? AM sigh and says, me, Inko, you, RG, GT and Nana and Poplar, the other 6-1 for all users by now. RG is Recovery Girl and GT is Gran Torino. Nizu nod and says, interesting, does he know? AM sigh and says, no of God no, Inko would kill me if I told him already without her knowing. Nizu chucks a little bit and says, she was always a fighter back in the day and I good one sad that she needs stop being a hero. AM sigh and says, well she might come out for retirement and help out a little. Nizu smiles and says, well she could come and feed class 1A because the amount for time Aizawa need to call for a new kitchen worry me. Them look at him and says, yeah no young Midoriya would die From embarrassment, 𝗍𝗂 smiles and says, "He would that what funny?" drop 𝗍𝗂 at his door and says, "Have a good night, sir." 𝗍𝗂 open the door and says, "You da friend." Go to his office and sit down and says, "You are doing good, my son." Deku walk into the big 3 dorm and says, "Is anyone up?" 𝗍𝗓 walk up to him and says, "Oh Deku, you're here." Deku nod and says, "Yeah, I am here to drop off 𝐻𝐬𝐽 to you guys." 𝗍𝗓 nod and says, "I hope it was all fine." Deku give 𝗍𝗓 𝗬𝐬𝐽 and says, "As always she." "An angel, do you need to take her tomorrow night?" 𝗍𝗓 smiles and says, "Nope, we are all here until Monday when we go." Deku nod and says, "Okay, I will see to on training on Saturday." 𝗍𝗓 nod and says, "Okay, sure will, and are you sure you don't want to stay the night?" Deku smiles and says, "It fine, I will be out for a bit." 𝗍𝗓 nod and says, "Well, see you later." 𝗍𝗓 walk up to her room and Deku put they music on they door, then run away and get to the main area where the teacher sleep and put they music on they door and go back to his dorm and put music on the door to then sit down in the common room and says, "Hope they like it. This is the main area, I don't know what to call it, and not my picture." Deku walk into the big 3 dorm and says, "Is anyone up?" 𝗍𝗓 walk up to him and says, "Oh Deku, you're here." Deku nod and says, "Yeah, I am here to drop off 𝗬𝗢𝗍𝗓 to you guys." 𝗍𝗓 nod and says, "I hope it was all fine." Deku give 𝗍𝗓 𝗬𝗢𝗍𝗓 and says, "As all Deku sit they think, what should I do? It is 4:30 and everyone is asleep. I could watch TV or go to the gym. Yeah, the gym sounds good. After hiding the gym is. Was 6:30. Deku walk into the kitchen and think, I should make breakfast for everyone then go to sleep. Nana says happily, "How are you not tired?" Deku think, "I have no idea." Deku start making breakfast with was pancakes, egg bacon, French toast, and sausages, and he get 18 plates and think, now before every get up I will get my food and go back to my dorm. Deku put on his plate 3 eggs, some bacon with toast and 4 sausages and 2 prices for French toast and make a nota and says, "Okay, they will be up soon." Deku go to his room, then he hear everyone go downstairs. When everyone walk in and Mina yells, "What smells so good?" Momo says happily, "Yes, it does smell really good." Everyone looks shocked at the food on the table and Lita says, "Who stayed up making us breakfast?" Kree walk over and see a nota and read it out. "Oh look, it is a nota from Deku bro. It says, hope you guys have had a nice sleep. I made breakfast for you guys because I just got home from babysitting 𝗬𝗢𝗍𝗓 and Kota, so I hit the gym and it was like 6:30, so I thought, well, if the music is not enough the food will be from Deku. PS I will be passed out when you are reading this nota. Wow, he made this for us. He is so manly." Jiro says confused, "What did he mean by music?" Momo look at her and says, "I don't know, but he made this food for us and we better eat up." After everyone eats breakfast they were shocked and Mina says, "Why have he not cooked for us before? It is so good." Toru nod and says, "It tastes so good I could eat it for every." Jiro went back to her room and saw something on her door. She looked at it and said, "Jiro, music made by Deku." Jiro took it off and came down and says, "Everyone look at your door. I think Deku made music for us." Everyone looked confused. Then Mina walked to her room and says, "Oh my god, he did." Then came back down and says, "Guys, he did. This is so cool. Everyone get they music now." Everyone walked to their room and came back and Denki says, "Can he sing?" Momo makes a music player and says, "One way to find out." Aizawa and Miss Joke and walk in and Aizawa says, "Okay, where is he?" Shoto look at him and says, "Do you mean Deku? He is asleep." Aizawa sigh and says, "Forget about that. Did he give you guys music too?" The whole class nod and Midnight walk in and says, So the little boy have my." Then just looks. Aizawa looks at her wired out and says, "No bad, Midnight." The wild PP cats walk in and Mandalay says, "You got some music too." May walk in too and says, "You all got music, nice." Everyone nod and they all sit down and Aizawa says, "Okay, who first?" Miss Joke says, "Me please." Aizawa sigh and says, "Fine, let go." After the song everyone was dumbfounded because they didn't know he could sing and Miss Joke says, "Yeah, like it that song." Aizawa sigh and says, "Yeah, it fit your personality perfect. Okay, I will go next." After the song and Aizawa says, "Oh, I will blame it on the kid." The whole class think, of course. Says happily, "Can we play my song?" Aizawa nod and says, "Sure, why not?" One after song. The class was still confused how they didn't hear his voice before and says, "He is really good at his." Jiro looked down and says, "He is," and didn't says anything at the concert. Momo pat her on the back and says, "He was popular sacred." Jiro nod and Midnight says, "Can we play my song now?" Aizawa nod and says, "Sure, why not?" Then the big three and Eri walk in and Mirio says, "Did you all get music too?" Everyone nod and the songs start playing. As soon as the first world start play they coved Eri and Kota eras. While Aizawa was shocked all the girls but Joke was angry that she got a song like this. While Midnight lick her lip and just have his hands in his face too. After the song finish Aizawa just look down and says, "I was not expecting that." Look at him and says, "I am worried now." Mina says in an annoyed tone, "Why don't we play another song?" Aizawa nod and says, "Okay Maki." Tamaki nod and says, "Okay sir." After playing his song everything was taken back that he can beatbox and Mina yells, "He can beatbox, God he is good." Aizawa look confused and says, "I didn't know he can do that." Look at him and says, "I don't think anyone did." Aizawa nod and says, "Okay Mirio you go." After the song play everyone was laughing even Aizawa. Then Mirio says, "Why did he give me that song but I love it." Aizawa take a breath and says, "I don't know but next 𝗎𝗎𝗓 please." After her song 𝗎𝗎𝗓 was blushing a little bit and says, "It is a very good song, Aizawa." Tiger, Mirio, Tamaki and all see the blush while the girls are thinking, are they all love song and song that says something nice? Aizawa nod and says, "Well how about we do the wild PP cats now?" Everyone nod and Aizawa says, "Good now Tiger." After the song Tiger nod and says, "He is really good at singing." Aizawa smiles and says, "Yeah he is okay 𝗵𝗃𝗍 go." After the song 𝗵𝗃 was licking her lips says, 𝗕𝐭𝐻. Ragdoll shoot her with the water gun and says, "Bad 𝗵𝗃." Aizawa sigh and says, "Okay Ragdoll please." Then he think, "Did me make a love song for all the girls except Joke because he knew I like her he is smart?" Yes he did. Aizawa just ask her out smirking face smirking face smirking face smirking face smirking face. After Ragdoll song I know it is getting annoying but I don't want to pat the song in so this is the better way. Rag was confused and says, "Does he really think this about us?" Mandalay look at her and says, "I don't know but my song." After her song she could feel her heart beating fast. Then Kota says happily but confused of what was going to happen, "Is Deku going to be my new dad?" Mandalay look at him eye level and says, "Kota hun I am too old for him. I am 30 he is 16 plus. I think he just made these song for me Ragdoll and 𝗵𝗃𝗍 so we didn't feel left out from the overgirls." Kota nod and wipers in her era. "Does that mean I still get to date Eri?" Mandalay nod and says, "Anyways next song, Midnight, 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗍. Ragdoll and Mandalay think, "I hope that Nortur yes he is young but still." Denki says, "Happily, yay." At the class turn, Aizawa smiles and says, "Okay Denki your turn." One after his song Denki yelled, "That was so cool." Aizawa sigh and says, "Okay Siro your go." Siro open is up and they Anoda and Siro says, "Hey they Anoda." In my one says, "Siro I don't know what you like so it is a rap if you don't like it I can change it." "Well Deku I do like rap so you're good." After the song everyone was shocked and Aizawa says, "How did he rap so fast?" Lita look at him and says, he does mumble fast so it Poplar help him." Aizawa nod and says, "He does and how is he not strutting while making the song?" Lita says, "Not sure. I think it Poplar because he is not with people. If he was he would be a mess." Aizawa nod and says, "Makes sense anyway your go Lita." For after Lita song everyone was laughing even Lita while says, "Okay I need to keep that song it is perfect." Aizawa take a breath and says, "Oh god now Shoto you go." After his song Shoto says, "I use my fire now." Uraraka says trying not to laugh, "I think he mean your personality." Shoto look at the floor and says, "I am that cold." Uraraka look at him and says, "Same as the time Lita ask if he looked like a dad do you what the truth or the nice answer?" Shoto look at her and say, "I guess the truth." Everyone says, "Yes." Shoto look and says, "Oh right." Aizawa sigh and says, "Uraraka your song please." After her song she was taken back and Uraraka said, "I doubt he like me I am just the best part for him as a friend." All the girls look and think, "I hope so he is mine." Aizawa nod and says, "Okay next." After all the boys song it is all the same for them and they all like it now May and the rest for the girls. Aizawa sigh and says, "Okay Momo turn." After hearing the first words they covered Eri and Kota era and Momo was confused. After the song Aizawa looked down and says, "My god." Mina walk over to Momo and says, "You good?" Momo just nod and says, "Yeah next please." Aizawa nod and says, "Jiro please." At the end Jiro is thinking, "Does he actually think I look good? I know I am not the best looking and have the biggest thing but no Jiro no lewd though I highly doubt it." Mina yells, "My turn Aizawa please." Aizawa nod and says, "Fine." After the song was happily listening while 𝗵𝗲 thinks, does he think I am cute even when I have pink skin and he must for look at my melons and but if he think it is fine deku dirty pev, true yells, is it my turn now sir, 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐫 and says, yes now hurry up, one after the song everyone was say how good it was while 𝗃 think, does me mean about my body you can't even see me and we are still looking at him, he is a cute little pev nice I like guys like me, he doesn't mean to but, does see stuff they don't what to but do by accident, 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐫 and says, second last 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗲 please, after 𝗧 song she was think, does he like me for who I am I mean the overgirls got love songs to so it poplar nothing it will be fine but what if he had look a my good, 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝗫 says happily, okay last one then we can leave, after May song she was think. He can keep me all he like if he really what I don't mind he is cute and I know he felt my bub he was sacred but I could tell he was getting a bit hard, one 𝐒𝐻𝚱 and says, okay we are done go to your dorm go out you can do whatever you just can't stay here, everyone leaves class 1A dorm to train or go to lunch while on all the girls mind joke where think, does he like me, 𝐒𝐻𝚱 and 𝗵𝗲 are in front for deku room and 𝐒𝐻𝚱 says, what should we do wake him up or let the girls get up him tomorrow, 𝗵𝗲 think and says, leave him in his room so the girls can get up him tomorrow, 𝐒𝐻𝚱 sigh and says, did you expect any for that, 𝗵𝗲 look at him and says, does it look like I had a idea I am more surprised than you, the next day and yes deku was asleep the whole day deku wake up at 5:30 and says, might as well make breakfast again, deku walk downstairs and made the same as yesterday then think, might as well train, deku leaves a nota again and gets some toast and reach toast and go for a run everyone came down the same and the same happened and 𝗵𝗲 says, they another nota it says, to class 1A I am going for a run I had breakfast already so eat as much as you what and you poplar listen to the music I made you guys yesterday and I am sorry to the girl if I made the songs to wired so this is a sorry breakfast for them and for the boys this is a thank you for not killing me in my sleep, aw he is so sweet, 𝗓 yells, he is so manly, 𝗬𝗲 smiling and says, okay let eat, after breakfast deku walk in and says, oh hi guys I thought you would be out by now, everyone look and yells, deku thank you we love the songs, deku blinks and says, I think I misheard the girls you said you liked it, all the girls yells, yes deku we love them, deku rub the back for his head and says, oh well then thank you for liking it so much 𝗵𝗲 yells, even the food is good how are you so good at so many think, deku sigh and says, well singing came from not talk to people that much so I just sung when I was alone and cooking came from my mum being on stiff work so I leaned from a young age, 𝗵𝗲 felt bad for him and says, I am sorry if I ask something personal, deku got worried and says, oh no it is fine I really liked it and sing got me away from people who helped me because they were just putting a target on they back so I am fine with it I am actually happy you asked, 𝗵𝗲 feeling a little bit better says, oh and 𝐒𝐻𝚱 what to see you, deku gulps and says, did you play them with him in the room, 𝗵𝗲 nod and says, yes we did is that a issue, deku look down and says, well if I die you know why. They all think and all go, oh you are dead, deku look up and says, really well wish me luck, 𝗓𝗄 says confidence, I am pretty sure 𝗵𝗲 is meant to be they do, deku yells walking out, great, 𝗵𝗲 sigh and says, well how fast do you think he will die, denki says, give it 5 At 𝐒𝐻𝚱 office deku walk in and says, hi sir you what to see me, 𝐒𝐻𝚱 get up and says, now that you are you, them and 𝐒𝐻𝚱 hug him and deku says confused, well this is a wired way to die, says, we are not killing you my boy we are giving you a hug, deku even more confused says what? 𝐒𝐻𝚱 and let go and 𝐒𝐻𝚱 says, thank you for making those love song for the girls, deku look at them both and says, what why, says sacred, well you see me, 𝐒𝚱 and 𝗎𝗎 all think you are going to be a 𝗎𝗲𝗄, deku sigh and says, make that tiger to he what me to be with ragdoll pix bob and Mandalay, 𝐒𝚱 smiles and says, well plus class 1A that 9 girls and plus a some pro that I wouldn't says until Monday, deku nod and say, okay I am now scared, sigh and say, you should but. That is all, for deku walk out and 𝐒𝚱 says, luckiest kid every not only the WWPC, class 1A, May and Midnight what to date him he also get Mirko, Ryukyu, MT Lady, Bubble Girl and 𝗬𝗓𝗄 that is 9 pro heroes and 7 heroes in training that is 16 girls that we know what to date him, look down and says, how will his mother take this, 𝐒𝚱 look at him and says, well we don't tell her until the time is right, deku walk into the dorms and everyone was confused and Deacon says, how didn't you die, deku look at him and says, I have zero idea, they didn't even yell at me, I think I need a nap to get my head around what happened. Deku walk up to his room and take off but his underwear and lay on top for his bed and think, Nana the hell happened? Nana open another coke and says, well I think you just get the green light to start 𝗓𝗄𝗏. Deku think, yeah one poplar with that I can't talk to girls well little Lona have you know. Nana smiles and says, SEC I hope not. Deku blushing like mad. And think, you know what I mean I can't do that stuff I can't look at a girl without says sorry 1000 times. Nana smiles and says, well kid you are in a wired place in life so are you going to do it? Recap Nana says, Nana smiles and says, well kid you are in a wired place in life so are you going to do it? Deku sigh and think, I mean I have zero confidence I am sacred I can't talk to girls and what if the boys find out? Nana giggles and says, you know you're talk to a girl right now, Deku says. Worried, was I can't see you know, Nana says confidence, my tips and but, everyone Essel is in the back and can to hear her when I type says I mean think for this part and a little bit for lemon Deku says worried. Why yeah it is just I am not used to girls. Nana ask worried think about 𝗓𝗏𝗏, what happened? Deku sigh and says, I got bullied my whole life and girl didn't talk to me when they just made fun for me. Nana felt sad for him and says, I am sorry what did the boys do? Deku says worried and sad, I got beat up by them told to kill myself from a young age. Nana now angry and sad for him says, what did the teacher do? Deku sigh and says, nothing just told everyone to avoid me. Nana now yell, I will kill that teacher. Deku sigh and says, clam down it is fine it was a long time ago. Nana breath and says, come into your head. Deku says, how do I do that? Nana smiles and says, close your eye. Deku nod and close his eye and gone into his brain and says, okay I'm here now. Nana come behind him and says, boo. Deku turn around and look at her and blush so hard Nana giggles and says, okay see what you mean now. Deku try to clam down and says, sorry I just was not expecting you. Nana smiles and says, what to be so hot? Deku nods sacred and he get hugged by Nana says, thank you no one said everything like that to him in so long. Deku says red as hell while in between her bub, no worries Nana. Nana let go for him and see that he is hard and says, someone's a bit hard here. Lemon start people Deku look down and says, I am so sorry. Nana smiles and says, don't be. Nana then place her hand on his PP and Deku freaks out says, what are you doing? Nana get on her knees and start unzip his pants says, good think I can't take your virginity in here but you can do some good tea. Deku says worried, Nana it not going to be to your likening. Nana pull down Ethic's pants and underwear and gasp at the 25-inch PP and says, not to my likening it is so big and thick. Deku blushing mad says, what do you mean I thought it was small? Nana giggles and says, you are so innocent of course not it a massive. Deku rub the back for his head says, really I didn't know. Nana smiles and says, how do you even hide this? Deku smiles and says, I have no idea. Nana pull her top down show 𝐷𝐷 bub and says, you been a good boy you deserve something. Deku glup and says, do I have a choice? Nana out his PP in between her tips and says, no you do not. Nana start doing a melon's job on him and Deku start mourning says, in an ID. On 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝐻 doing. Nana pull off and says, I think we should. Nana starts sucking again and Deku is mourning. Nana starts sucking faster and faster and Deku says, Nana why are going to 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝐶𝗵𝗏. Nana pull out and take a breath and says good. Nana goes faster than before and Deku try not to come and Nana start to tease him by going slower than Deku blow a load and Nana try to swallow all for it but they was too much and Deku start says, I am so sorry Nana I didn't mean to. Nana smiles and says, why are you sorry I should be thanking you that was the best melon's job I have ever done. Deku pull up his pants and says, still I cummed him you're in your mouth without saying anything. Nana get the cum from her melons and lick all it and says, I like it better that way so clam down and I want to be part for you 𝗓𝗏𝗏. Deku rub the back of his head and says, yeah but I don't know if I can tell anyone. Nana pull up her top and says, I am fine with that now you need to get ready for dinner with AM and your mum. Deku smiles and says, okay again sorry about this. Nana smiles and says, don't be sorry I am thankful you did it with me. Deku smiles and says, okay no worries I guess. Deku get out for his head and Nana think in her head, damn this kid is good at that I can't wait until I get his PP in my PP. And for lemon 9 Deku get up and look for his new suit and have a shower then get dressed in his suit not my pick again and he walk down to the common room and Momo come up to him says, you like fresh Deku where you going? Deku rubbed the back of his head and says, "Thank you Momo, and I'm only going out with my mum to dinner." Mina says, "Aw, that's sweet, not my pick again," and he walked down to the common room and Momo come up to him says, "You like fresh Deku, where you going?" Deku rubbed the back of his head and says, "Thank you Momo, and I'm only going out with my mum to dinner." Mina says, "Aw, that's sweet for you to go out with your mother." True says, "Aw, that's so sweet for you." Deku laugh worried and says, "Well, I will be back tomorrow afternoon." Denki says, "See ya bro, and before you go me, Kree, Mina and 𝗬𝗏 want to talk to you." Deku nod and says, "Okay, is the lobby okay for you guys?" They all says, "Yes." Then they all walk downstairs and Kree start, "Okay Monday, when you snap and said everything we've been talk, and you're right, he treats us like 𝗧𝗔 all the time, calling us name." Mina continues saying, "The names are stuff we hate, like raccoon, I make me feel 𝗧𝗔 or Denki, he call him idiot all the time and he feel bad about it go on." 𝗬𝗏 continues saying, "What you did on Monday showed us that he is not as big as we thought, but..." Denki continue in a worried tone, "When you told everyone that he told you to kill yourself, we felt bad of you, but we have some questions." Deku nod and says, "Okay, ask away." Mina sigh and says, "Did you ever try?" Deku looks shocked. "No god no, I might have forgot bullied by everyone at my school, but no, and I never would even try." Kree smiles and says, "Okay good, another question, did you ever samp like that in middle school?" Deku smiles and says, "No, I didn't have a quirk so I could fight back, I was what know as a late bloomer." Deacon smiles and says, "So that why your bones break when you use your quirk?" Deku nod and says, "Any other questions?" 𝗬𝗏 says, "One from me, did you ever cut your wrist?" Deku think to the past and says fast, "No, I have not done that every." Denki nod and says, "Did teachers ever help you?" Deku sigh and says, "Okay, promise not to get mad." They all said angry, "They didn't help you at all?" Deku sigh and says, "No, they didn't care that much unless they told me to kill myself and fought for them, but that was just a word, says, don't do that, so they didn't care." Mina says annoyed, "That is bad teacher." Deku smiles and says, "Poplar, but it is in the past." Kree says worried, "Do you have any scars from middle school?" Deku pull up his shirt and show an big long scar and says, "This is the worst, and walk it off until I got home." 𝗬𝗏 angry says, "Who?" Deku put in his shirt and says, "Not important anymore." Mina pissed off and says, "It was him, wasn't it?" Deku looks stunned and says, "Yeah, I was, and I was in hospital for 2 weeks." Kree hit the wall and says, "Bro, why didn't you say anything to you?" Deku rubbed the back for his head and says, "Like they would believe a quirkless person that the top for class 1A would bull him." Denki hug him and says, "I am so sorry bro." Deku pat him on the back and says, "It is fine, so don't act different to him please." Kree asks confused, "Why?" Deku smiles and says, "Because they no point, he will just yell at you." Mina giggles and says, "Okay, thank you." Kree, Denki and 𝗬𝗏 walk upstairs and Mina says, "Oh, and Deku look up and says, "Yes Mina." Mina smiles and says, "You look CC in your suit." Deku blush and says, "Thank Mina, see you later." Nana smiles in his head and says, "And you have some nice girls after you." Deku think, "The hell Nana?" Nana giggles and says, "What can I say?" Deku think, "Okay Nana to the back come out in dinner." Deku walk into 𝐴𝐵 office and say, "Hey you here?" 𝐴𝐵 get up and says, "Okay, let go and get your mother." Deku smiles and says, "Okay ow Nana, can you stop laughing your butt off?" Look worried and says, "Leave the kid alone Nana." For at the Deku home, 𝐒𝐭𝐲 walk out and says, "You're both late." Deku smiles and says, "Sorry mum, they were a lot for people out." 𝗵 says, "Sacred?" "Yeah, that." 𝐒𝐭𝐲 smiles and says, "Well, 𝗬𝗏 it says on the news that my son stoped bomb going off in the mall." Deku smiles sacred and says, "Well, you see, it was matter of life and death." 𝐒𝐭𝐲 pull his ear and says, "They was no one in that building." 𝗵 says, "Sacred." Miss Deku. 𝐒𝐭𝐲 look and says, "And you let my son go?" And they was about to run, then 𝐒𝐿𝐲 grab his ear and says, "Don't even think about it." Deku smiles and hug her saying, "Love you to mum." 𝐒𝐿𝐲 hug back and says, "Love you to, but you're still in trouble." Deku nod and says, "Fair, now let go to dinner. I feel like 𝗵𝐭𝐲 is a loving mum but will kill you at dinner." They all sitting down and 𝗵𝐿𝐲 says, "So how training going?" Deku smiles and says, "Good." In Deku head, Nana trying not to laugh, and one user says, "Is this going well?" 2 user says, "I have no idea." Nana says, "Oh, this is going great." 3 user says, "I pretty sure it not." 4 user says, "I think we are not helping." Nana says, "Hey Deku, are we helping?" 5 user sigh and says, "Leave the kid alone." 6 user say, "Why are we in the front again?" 1 user say, "Nana." Everyone but Nana All makes sense. In real world says happily, yeah, he is a very good kid in class, you should be happy you raised a nice and heroic kid. 𝗏𝗏 says flushed, thank you, but UA is a very different school. Most teacher have you no teaching degrees, but at UA they a sleeping bag, a female pev, a loud man, happy face, bang bang guy, and a bear is running the school. Deku and says, yeah, it is a wired school. 𝗏𝗏 giggles and says, but I thank you for taking us out for dinner. Smiles and says, oh, it nothing. 𝗏𝗏 smiles and says, so do you like anyone at the moment, Deku? Deku chocks on his food and says, no mum, I don't. Jesus, you ask wired question. Smiles and says, well, you have been seeing the girls more and more. Deku now worried says, that because you and Aizawa are putting me in group work with the girls and asking me to fight them. Smiles and says, why do you think we do that? 𝗏𝗏 look at and says, being like Nana, are you? Deku look confused and says, how do you know Nana? 𝗏𝗏 even more confused says, how do you know Nana? Says, question in the car, but because we are done dinner we can tell you now. Deku asks confused, tell me what? Smiles and says, I am your dad's. Deku look at and then 𝗏𝗏 and says, mum, say something. 𝗏𝗏 look up and says, he is telling to Tirth is your dad. Deku look down and says, damn it. who now feels sad says, dose that make you upset. Deku look up and says, oh god no, I am over the moon, but it just I had a bet with Todoroki that you weren't my dad. Now worried says, oh, I see why now. What was the bet? Deku look at him and says, you will find out tomorrow. Now Sacred says, okay, well, the reason we are telling you now is that you kind knew, and now that Nana is in your head she was going to tell you one day. 𝗏𝗏 says happily, what is this about our son have Nana in his head? Look at her and says, not now. 𝗏𝗏 smiles and says, you better. Deku smiles and says, yeah, I could imagine. And how did you two meet? 𝗏𝗏 smiles happily at him and says, oh honey, I used to be a hero, but then I got 𝗕𝗲𝗎𝗔𝗔 so I raised you. Deku look confused and says, you used to be a hero mum, why didn't you tell me? 𝗏𝗏 smile and says, really, you know why, but I am think about going back into the hero business. Sigh and Deku says, yeah, not happening mum, I love you too much for you to go back out there, it is too deadly these days. Says, thank you. Deku smiles and says, that go for you too. 𝗏𝗏 smiles and says, I would be safe. Deku smiles and says, that like me saying I won't break my bones. 𝗏𝗏 and says, please stop breaking you bones. Deku smiles and says, I will on the day I die. They laughed for after tell 𝗏𝗏 what happening to Deku in the car and dropping her off. Says, my boy, are you sure it is okay that I am your dad? Deku smiles and say, of course it is, you're my dad. Says with tears in his eye, but I wasn't they to help you when you were bullied, and 𝗏𝗏 feels guilty about it when I should be. Deku sigh and says, I know mum this like that because for me, but the bullying is something you should not be bothered about. I just went day by day, but I was fine. Yes, being blow up, death threats every day and being hospitalized for 2 weeks are bad, but you wouldn't have helped, so it is fine. Smiles and says, thank you my boy, I mean I lot. Deku giggles and says, of course dad. Taken back says, I need to get used to that, no one ever call me dad. Deku smiles and says, so when are we telling everyone? Smiles and says, well, we are telling the teacher now, the only one that know is 𝗎𝗎. In 𝗎𝗎's office walk in with Deku and says, we are here. 𝗎𝗎 smiles and says, okay go. Smiles and says, okay Deku, here is my son. Mike jaw drops. Aizawa nod. Midnight is licking her lip and the rest are shocked, and Midnight says, so the CC boy in the school dad is All Might. Says, please stop trying to have C with him. Deku blush a little and says, this that all? Aizawa sigh and says, one more thing, you will be on the girl plane going to Australia because they do one many on the boys plane. Deku look confused and says, why me? Aizawa put his hand on Deku's shoulder and says, you're the only one to trust. Deku nod and says, right sir, got it. Deku goes to sleep and wake up. Deku walk downstairs and he too in the where everyone this and says, I have something to says and a suggestion, you all move away from the table except Todoroki. Everyone move away confused, and Deku says, okay, so last night I found out that my father and Todoroki flips the table and yells, I knew it, I win the bet, you know. Deku nod and says, yes I do, is it in your room? Todoroki smiles and says, yep, go and get it. Momo and confused, what did you too bad? Todoroki smiles and says, you will find out After a while Deku came down and at this point all the teacher where they Deku walk in and every gasp. After a while Deku came down and at this point all the teacher where they Deku walk in and every gasp. 5 not my pick, and also it is so wired and he is more shy and red and a much bigger tent all the girls but joke think, this that size for his PP. Deku says annoyed, why do you do this to me Todoroki? Aizawa is still in shock and Midnight yells, God damn you look fine. All the girls says, yes he does. Deku now red as a tomato says, what was that? Denki yells, how have we not noticed this about him? Deku smiles and says, I have no idea. Ara yells, you're so manly. Aizawa take a pic and send it to the wild PP cat and says, he like it right now. I am still in shock that he look like that. Tiger text. OMG what the hell are you sure it is him? Pix Bob text. I don't care I just what that. Ringdoll text. I need a minute. Mandalay text. Dame. 1 AM says, my boy you have so many scars on you. Deku look down and says, I do to hun I just kind get used to them. Aizawa says worried, that is not normal for your age. Todoroki take a pic and send it to his sister saying, guess what I have? Fuyumi text. I am still in class Shoto. Todoroki text. I know you like him. Fuyumi text, you made me make the room go up to 150 cell, that is 302 F. Todoroki text. Wow you really do like him don't you? Fuyumi text, Fu Shoto face with steam from nose. Todoroki text, love you to sis. 3 Aizawa sigh and says, okay enough for whatever this is. Deku smiles and says, I will be in my room asleep if anyone ask. As Deku turn around all the girls in the room but joke get a bleeding nose. Deku while getting dressed think, well that was something. Nana smiles and says, yes it was kid now that you were a good boy you can get a treat. Deku says, can we get to my dorm? Nana says securely, I can do it while you walk back. Deku says, how are you going to get me to do that? Nana says, you will figure it out. Back downstairs Aizawa says, I need a drink. Snip, Kim, Mike, Nizu, Cementos, Power Loader and Ectoplasm says, I will come with you. The boys in class 1A says, can we come with you? Aizawa yells, no. Kree says, then I'm going to my room. The rest for the boys say, same. One lemon time Deku is walked down the hallway to his room and while is in his head doing a melon's job saying, you are so big lucky you had underwear on oh then they would be very exited. Deku think, Nana can I get to my room then you can do this. Nana with her tips around Deku PP says, no can do your way to hard to put it away. Deku open his door and close it then lock it and close his blinds and says, damn it Nana. Nana giggles and Deku lay down and think, I am coming in. Deku go into his mind and the first thing he see is Nana naked and doing a melon's job on him and Nana says, about time you came in here. Deku smiles annoyed, well I was trying not to mourn in the hallways. Nana smiles and says, and you didn't so that start. After they did Tip's job /BLW he had a nap. Deku wake up to Kree yelling though his door, bro you up? Deku wake up and says, yeah I am now. Denki yells, oh sorry but we wanted to ask some questions. Deku open his door and says, sure come in. Denki and Kree walk in then Kree says, so bro we want to know how did you put up with him for so long? Deku shocked says, oh easy I just didn't let him get to me but when the blew me up over and over again I just got used to it. Denki look at him worried and says, dude you have came so far. Deku giggles and says, yeah I really have hun it funny. Kree smiles and says, yeah it is first day you almost get kick out by why. Denki continues, now if you took that test again you would be in top. Deku laugh a little and says, I highly doubt that. Kree says, well when you started you broke every bone in your body now you rarely break any bone and you single-handle save the class and teachers and 2 kid. Denki says, yeah dude you came so far. Deku says flustered, guys come on you both done great too. Kree says confidence, not to you that what the boy like about you you're not asking for anything in return you just go and help. Denki says, yeah you do good wherever you go the class is happy to have you here. Deku smiles and says, guy come on you're going to kill me. Kree smiles and says, god you are funny. Denki smiles and says, oh we forgot to tell you everyone is downstairs waiting for us to start dinner. Deku look down and says, I don't think I can go downstairs. Kree says, it okay the girls are talking now and the boys are no longer shocked. Deku get up and says, you sure? Kree and Denki get up and says, yep you should be fine. After dinner Mina says, Deku are you packed? Deku sigh and says, no not yet I am going to do it tomorrow. Aizawa walk in and says, you all know we are leaving tomorrow to get to a hotel. The whole class run to their room and Miss Joke says, is that to get them packed? Aizawa nod and says, yes, it is best way to do it. The whole class came back down and Mina yells, why didn't you says anything before? Aizawa smiles and says, because we're not leave tomorrow, we are leaving on Monday. The airport is not that far, and I was just meant to get you all packed and ready. The whole class sigh and says, of course. Aizawa smiles and says, night kids, sleep well. Everyone in class 1A says, night sir. And Deku walk over to him and whisper in his ear, do her good, Aizawa. Look at him and shakes his head and says, no. Aizawa walk out with joke and Deku says, okay, I need sleep tonight. Everyone says, night Deku. Plus the next day nothing happened. Deku wake up and grounds. Deku get up and grounds. Then he hear Aizawa yelling, everyone get ready. Deku get up and think, what to wear? Yeah, that will do. Deku walk out in not my pick, and without the ice block in his hand the class walk down, and already they is the wild PP cats. Midnight, the big three, Eri, Koda and Mei. Aizawa look at the class and says, okay, all the boys on one boy except Deku and the girls on a not my pick, and without the ice block in his hand the class walk down, and already they is the wild PP cats. Midnight, the big three, Eri, Koda and Mei. Aizawa look at the class and says, okay, all the boys on one boy except Deku and the girls on another with Deku. Deku look at him and says, okay, first the plane, now the bus, what next? The same floor as the girls. Aizawa giggles a little and says, no you're not. That lucky. Todoroki walk over to Deku and says, oh, and just to let you know my sister is coming on the trip too. Deku nod and Aizawa says, okay, everyone to the buses now. After packing the bus and getting in on the girls' bus, Deku is sitting next to Tsu and Uraraka, trying to not look at anything. Midnight ask him across the bus, are you okay? You seem a bit red. Deku look at Midnight and says in the clam voice he could, yeah fine, just a bit worried about the LOV. Midnight says, don't worry, they been quiet. Momo says, yes, they have not tried anything after overhaul. Deku nod and says, I guess you're right. Deku think that what worries me, they've been quiet to quiet. One user says, same here kid, but clam down. Deku think, I guess you're right. Tsu poked him and says, are you okay? You seemed zoned out. Deku nod and says, yeah, just a bit tired. Deku think, I wonder why. One user says, sorry kid. 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐵 says, worried. Really, what keep you up? Deku look confused at the tone and says, just Poplar slept wrong or tossed and turned. Mandalay says, worried. Will you be good? Deku nod and says, yeah fine. Nana says, great save kid. Deku think, really now? Mina says, I can't wait to go to the beach in my new swimsuit. Deku think for a while any talk about they swimsuit, and the one user says, kid, we are still here. Two users says, oh my god kid. Three users says, what that F kid? Deku think, sorry I can't help it. Midnight says, licking her lip, what you be wearing? Deku de look and says, oh just some swimming trunks. All the girls think except joke, that mean he will be shirtless. Yes. Two on the boys' bus. Aizawa yelling, Denki, I swear to god you blow up the bus I will kill you. Denki yelling, I am not trying to, it just happening. The whole bus is yelling on the girls' bus. Jiro have her headphones on. Momo is reading a book. Deku, Uraraka and Tsu are talking, and Midnight, Mina, Toru, 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐵, Ragdoll, Mandalay are think about Deku, and Eri is on Nijire asleep when are got to the airport. Aizawa say, okay, Australia is 57 hours away, and we have two personal plans from UA that fit all the boys on one plane but one, and they is a extra space on the girls one, so Deku is being forced to go in the girls plane. Mirko come behind them says, poor kid. 𝗵𝗲 lady stands next to her saying, poor kid indeed. Ryukyu giggles and says, leave him alone girls. Last minute add sorry. Uwabami come behind them giggles, you three are so wired. Mirko look at her and says, you're one to talk. Then Fuyumi come behind the shyly walking around then to see her bother and says, Shoto, have you packed Poplar this time? Shoto remember last time too. Flashback. Fuyumi yelling, why didn't you pack underwear for a 4-week vacation? Shoto yelling, I have no idea. Fuyumi yelling, why Shoto, my god, what is wrong with you? Natsuo yelling, this is why dad doesn't love us. Shoto yells, he never did. Endeavor yelling, I do love you all. Fuyumi yells, just like Mum Hun. Natsuo go quiet and Shoto yells, holy the thesis dame. 3 and 4. Flashback. Shoto says, well now we are not in a F family. Aizawa annoyed says, now you in a more F family. Deku giggles sacred. Okay everyone clam down, we are at the airport. Aizawa nod and says, okay everyone go and hurry up, you got to put your back up. After getting thought everything, Aizawa sigh sleepy and says, that took so long 𝗫𝗫𝐁𝐵 why did you bring a frozen bottle for water to the airport and says, it not water it ice, 𝗫𝗫𝐁 yells, it not though, 𝐒𝐽𝑎 ready to kick 𝗫𝗫𝐁 but yells, you really wanna start this now. Deku get in the middle for them and says, okay clam down how about we get some breakfast, 𝐈𝐽𝑎. Calming down says to his class, okay fine I all gave you credit card try not to use it all at one place. Deku sigh in relief then 𝐈𝐽𝑎 turn around and walk says mumble, F 𝗫𝗫𝐁 and his F ice, Miss Joke walk over to 𝐈𝐽𝑎 then he turn around and yells, everyone stay close together and be back by 9 our plane leaves at 10. After getting breakfast time 9 o'clock Deku think, okay 30 minutes to go. Mina come up behind him and says, hey what you doing? Deku shocked says, oh hey Mina why aren't you with the others? Mina says, well 𝐈𝐽𝑎 said stay close together so asked the girls if they wanted to go but the girls already people but 𝗬𝗏𝗏 said she would go but 𝗕𝗏𝗵𝗃 blocked you big time. Deku look confused and says, what do you mean by 𝗵𝗃 block me? Mina says, 𝗕𝗏 said I should go with you and she should stay with you. Deku confused says, it fine they friend and she should stay with him. Mina roll her eye and says, anyways have you had breakfast? Deku nod and says, yeah you. Mina says happily, yep so I have some questions. Deku nod and says, ask away. Mina says, do I look good? Deku confused says, where's this coming from? Mina says, the song you made for me. Deku remember and says, okay don't take this the wrong way you are appealing and pretty you don't need people who don't like you for you. Mina say shocked, you really do think I am pretty? Deku nod and say, yes I do so the lucky guy that get you should be happy. Mina think, I hope it you. Mina say happily, yeah the lucky someone. After talking to Mina more 9:50 𝐈𝐽𝑎 walk next to Mina and Deku and says, I see you two are on a date. Mina blushes and Deku turns red and says, 𝐈𝐽𝑎 why? Mina says, no sir just no. Miss Joke come behind 𝐈𝐽𝑎 saying, come on 𝐈𝐽𝑎 don't bully the kids. Deku clams down a bit and says, so 𝐈𝐽𝑎 how was your date with Joke? Joke turned red and 𝐈𝐽𝑎 have a little blush yelling, no just you know. Joke says, no 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗲 𝗧𝗏 look and says what? Joke clam down and says calmly, sorry I said no 𝗧𝗏 would never date me. 𝗧𝗏 nod and says, yeah never. Deku says, yeah sure winking face never. 𝗧𝗏 says, okay get ready we are going soon. After getting in the boy plane 𝗫𝗫𝐁 say, so why does Deku get to go on the other plane? 𝗧𝗏 says, because he is the only that is not a 𝗵 and can put up with the girls. 𝗕𝗏 says, why didn't we just split the girls and boy in half? 𝗧𝗏 look at him and says, shut the F up 𝗕𝗏. 𝗕𝗏 says, and they is a lot more room on the plan. 𝗧𝗏 look at him yelling, I said shut the F up 𝗕𝗏. 𝗵 says, okay everyone clam down. 7 girls plane. Mina says, let ole truth or dare. All the girls says, yes. 𝗬𝗏 point at Deku and says, I think he not playing. Mina says, let ole truth or dare. All the girls says, yes. 𝗬𝗏 point at Deku and says, I think he not playing, not my pick and he is upright and have a hoodie on and here on in it kind of lemon. All the girls think, he's so cute while he is asleep. Mina nod and says, okay let's start girls truth or dare. 𝗵𝗃𝗍. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 says, dare? Mina smiles and says, I dare you to sit on Deku lap. Every girl stunned but Miss Joke think, you little but. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 sigh and get up saying, F you Mina. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 sit on his lap think, god damn this feels so good. Deku who is not actually asleep yelling in his own mind, what do I do here someone help. Everyone leaves then Nana saying you're on your own kid. Then the door slam and Deku think, damn it. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 says, okay truth or dare. May says, truth. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 says, what is the mostest XL thing you thought of with Deku in it? May look down and says, do you want to be scared what go through my mind or says a clam one? 𝗵𝗃𝗍 stunned says, sacred. May says, okay so you going to think I am crazy but 48 hour for whatever he wants but he can't stop until the 48 hours are done. Miss Joke says, what is wrong with you people? He 16-inch Mirko says, you would do it with 𝗧𝗏 shut up. Miss Joke says, the difference is that first we are both 30 while you all trying to F a 16-year-old and second 𝗧𝗏 is not in the plane now is he? Mirko says, you didn't say you wouldn't have a C with him. Eri asks confused, what does a C mean? 3 end for lemon for now. Everyone look at Eri and Mina says, 𝗧𝗏 going to kill us? Everyone nod and Joke walk up to her and says, something you will learn when you're older and the right age. Eri says, oh okay Ganma one. Joke look at her and says, who would be grandpappy? Eri says happily, 𝗬𝗓𝗵𝗲 says, who would be your dad? 𝗬𝗓𝗄 says, more happy, Mr. Deku. Everyone look confused and Joke says, do you see Mr. Deku as your dad? 𝗬𝗓𝗄 nod and says, yes, Papa saved me with Uncle myheroacademia says, wounding. Who would be you mum then? 𝗬𝗓𝗄 look down and says, I don't have a mum yet but I will one day. Deadhead. She think I am her father, oh my god. Joke. Asks confused, why 𝗵𝗲? 𝗬𝗓𝗄 says happily, Mr. Deku mum and dad are number 2 you and grandpa is 1. 𝗕𝗓𝗢 says, 𝗬𝗓𝗄 are you tired? 𝗬𝗓𝗄 nod and says, yes aunt. 𝗕𝗓𝗢 says happily, well I will take you to another room so you can sleep if anything happens call for me. 𝗬𝗓𝗄 nod and 𝗕𝗓𝗢 take to another room to sleep. Rag says, 𝗵𝘃𝗍 I think you can get for Deku now. 𝗵𝘃 nod and sit in her chair and May says, okay my turn. Midnight truth or dare? Midnight says, truth. May smiles and say, have you ever tried to have a see with Deku? Midnight blushes a little and says, not going to lie I tired to get him to have a see with me in class before. Joke get up and says, nope I am going to go and be a grandma to 𝗬𝗓𝗄. Joke leave then Midnight say, okay truth or dare Momo? Momo say shyly, truth. Midnight say, do you look at Deku when he does have a shirt on? Momo quietly says, yes. Midnight says, what was that? 𝗔𝗂 says, she said yes. Momo yells, 𝗔𝗂 don't act like you don't look at him. 𝗔𝗂 look at her and says, when? Momo says, at the pool and at camp when he was shirtless and that one time in the gym when he was too hot in his shirt so he took it off. 𝗔𝗂 smiles and says, how did you know that? Momo looked down and says, shut up. Midnight laugh and says, wow you girls get turned on when he's shirtless. 𝗵𝘃𝗍 says, have you seen him shirtless? Midnight says, no never have. Wow. 𝗧𝗏 take out her phone and show Midnight Deku shirtless then Midnight start to have a bleeding nose says, okay I see why. 𝗧𝗏 take out her phone and show Midnight Deku shirtless then Midnight start to have a bleeding nose says, okay I see why. Not my pick. Mina says, how did you get that photo? 𝗧𝗏 blush a little and says, that not important. Deku is screaming in his mind after a 19-hour planned trip. They should get there but 7 o'clock if I am not putting in the time zone difference so deal with it. The plans land. The tall boy smiles and think, here they are. Everyone is looking around saying how different it is then. Say, why hi they? 𝗬𝗓𝗄 look at him and says, who are you? Smiles and says, oh yes my manners my name is 𝗕𝗏𝗁 I will be your guide for the month. 𝗬𝗓𝗄 sigh in relief and says, well good to see you 𝗕𝗓𝗄. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, same to the child and the teacher and pros. 𝗬𝗓𝗄 says, 𝗎𝗓𝗄 didn't say everything about you. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, of course he didn't. I will tell you on the bus. Let go. After getting on the bus Deku says, so are you a teacher or a pro? 𝗕𝗓𝗄 laugh and says, no I am a hero in training like all you. Says, why are you showing us around? Not to be mean but you're a little young to do this aren't you? 𝗕𝗓𝗄 sigh and says, I will explain later but time for some rules here. We don't use your last name. You first name is your name. Second rule, don't go anywhere without anyone knowing. Third rule, if I say don't go they don't go. They got it? Everyone nod. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, okay now times for nicknames because I won't remember all for you. 𝗬𝗓𝗄 say, I like your way for doing this. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, well some for you I am going to be calling you by your hero name like Deku, Midnight, 𝗵𝘃𝗍, Mandalay, Tiger, Ragdoll, Mirko, Bubble Girl, Ryukyu, Miss Joke or just Joke and 𝗬𝗓𝗄. Everyone nod and say, why are hero names? 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, to make it simple for me now for your real names 𝗔𝗂, Momo, Mina, 𝗬𝗏, Make, Denki, Kri, Toru, Shoto, Sato, Aji, Koda, Aoyama, Shoji, Siro, Fumikiage or Fum, 𝗕𝗓𝗓, Tamaki, Mirio and the two most important 𝗬𝗓𝗓 and 𝗏𝗏. I could have gave them nickname but I couldn't be bothered to. 𝗬𝗓𝗄 says, you didn't say my name. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, okay now the names I made up for people I can't say or I just want to have fun. Do sleeping bag or sir? Sonic and float away. Lita say, am I Sonic? 𝗕𝗓𝗄 sigh and says, yes now shut up Sonic. Float away says, I am float away. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 nod and 𝗬𝗓𝗄 get in a sleeping bag saying, is a fair name. Deku put up his hand and says, what your quirk? 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, I am like Sir Quirk but when I touch someone they can't use they quirk for amount for time and the time get shorter by me get rid from more people quirks. 𝗬𝗓𝗄 look at him and says, you don't get dry eye 𝗕𝗓𝗄. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 smiles and says, no but my joints do hurt a lot after a while. 𝗬𝗓𝗄 look at Deku and says, you're muting again Deku. 𝗕𝗓𝗄 laugh and smiles then says, Okay, now that out for the way, 𝗎𝗓𝗂 have booked the most high-class hotel in the country for all of you. They are split into towers. One tower is for the girls and one tower for the boy. You have one floor each gender, and up the top is the penthouse. It is joined up the top and down the bottom where they 3 floors for food. The bottom level is the lobby. Everyone nod and Gil says, okay, good, now that we are here, let go. After getting everyone in the lobby, Gil walk up to the front office and says, hi, I am here for you. 𝗎𝗓𝗂, it is under. Lady says, oh yes, here the keys, here the boy keys cards, the girl keys cards, and the penthouse key. Gil nod and says, thank you. Lady says, floor 40 for both for them. Gil nod and walk over and says, okay, midnight, here are the girls keys cards, floor 40. Gil look at 𝗧𝗏 and says, here are the boys key cards, same floor, everyone go with him, but Deku, you have the penthouse. Deku look confused and says, what? 𝗧𝗏 look at him and says, well, everyone that was coming along thought you should have a penthouse and 𝗎𝗓𝗂 booked it before we asked him. Deku, now embarrassed, says, why you didn't need to do that. 𝗓𝗏 yells, you earn it, dude. Denki. Yeah, you need this so bad, relax a little. Deku look around and says, anyone what the penthouse? Everyone says, no. Gil starts to laugh and 𝗧𝗏 says, take the goddamn card and shut up, problem child. Gil hand Deku the card and says, take it, I read your file like everyone else, but you file is interesting to say the least you should be happy. Deku say, I can't take this. Everyone yells, take it. Deku look at the card and says, okay, fine, but you everyone can come in when they what to. After everyone got unpacked and all went to the lobby, 𝗧𝗏 says, okay, now that done, Gil, where will we be eating tonight? Gil sigh and says, well, you all be eating in the hotel tonight because I didn't really know, and so let me get to and book it. Gil and 𝗧𝗏 walk over to the front office and the lady says, how can I help you? Gil smiles and says, can I please book for 35 to have dinner tonight? The lady smiles and says, of course, I will tell the kitchen staff right now. 𝗧𝗏 look confused and says, they 36. Gil smiles and says, oh, I know, I already eaten, so 35. 𝗧𝗏 nod and the lady says, you can go up now. 𝗧𝗏 look at everyone and yells, hurry up, let go, we are already making it hard enough for them. 𝗧𝗏 think, what are you hiding from us? Gil walk into the room and sigh saying, I better go out now. Gil suits up in his hero gear, which this Gil walk into the room and sigh saying, I better go out now. Gil suits up in his hero gear, which this not my pick, and without all the weapons. Gil smiles and says, I really like this gear, now wear my scythe. Oh, there you are. Gil pick up his scythe, which look like this. Gil smiles and says, I really like this gear, now wear my scythe. Oh, there you are. Gil pick up his scythe, which look like this, not my pick. Gil then put on a helmet, not my pick, and it black. Gil look around and says, now where are my guns? Gil pick up 2 gun and put them into a gun holder, not my pick, and it black. Gil look around and says, now where are my guns? Gil pick up 2 gun and put them into a gun holder. Gil guns and they 2 for them. Gil out on his back and think, how will I get out for here? Satan in Gil mind, the door over they. Gil think, F off you, I am going to the roof. 2 Gil guns and they 2 for them. Gil out on his back and think, how will I get out for here? Satan in Gil mind, the door over they. Gil think, F off you, I am going to the roof. At the rooftop, Gil think, when will I know I am ready? Satan says, you won't be ready all at ISIS. A leap for faith says, who are you? One before 𝗧𝗏 was seeing if Gil was okay, saw someone go up to the roof and he go to the roof too and says, who are you? Gil looks at him and says, sir, I can explain. 𝗧𝗏 confused says, do I know you? Gil take off the hood and the helmet and says, it me, sir. 𝗧𝗏 nod and says, so you're a vigilante? Gil nod and put his hands out for cuffs to be put on and says, take me away, sir. 𝗧𝗏 slap his hands away and says, I am not turning you in, but I wanna ask some questions. Gil nod and get taken to 𝗧𝗏 room and 𝗧𝗏 call the rest for the teacher. 𝗧𝗏 say, okay, how did you start this? Gil sigh and says, well, I am the 5th down the line for the old leader for the League for Vigilante. Says, but it said anyone, even that BLD for anyone for the leader were killed. Gil smiles and says, well, my 5-time great-grandpa gave his soul to Satan himself to live and made a deal. That deal was if all for the hero unit died by the hand for someone with his BLD, but if that person failed, they will be Satan's slaves forever until they all died. Midnight says, but all the leaders for the hero unit would be died by now. Gil smiles and says, oh no, they alive alright, and they want me dead so I can't keep the circle going around. Says, is the class in danger? Gil nod and says, they find near me the hero unit have not done anything in a long time. 𝗧𝗏 look down and says, where is the base? Gil look down and says, I think here but I have not found them yet. Deku at the door says, wow. Everyone look around at him and 𝐒𝐻 say, I think how long you are going to be there for. Deku rub the back for his head and says, sorry this look important. 𝐒𝐻 get up and says, oh you're fine you wouldn't figure it out later. 𝐒𝐻 smiles and says, oh Aizawa we are going to my school. Tomorrow, Aizawa nod and 𝐒𝐻 go up to the roof and Deku goes to the roof. Then 𝐒𝐻 says, about time. Deku looks at him and says, so why aren't you gone yet? 𝐒𝐻 smiles and says, well I want to talk about one for all. Deku look at him and says, I don't know what that is. 𝐒𝐻 smiles and says, then I will ask him. Deku sigh and says, okay what you want to know. 𝐒𝐻 smiles and says, that more like it and what I want to know is will you fight? Deku confused says, fight what? 𝐒𝐻 look at him dead in the eye and says, anything. Deku sigh and says, if they evil yes. 𝐒𝐻 nod and says, okay you can go now. Oh and tell your dad I know. 𝐒𝐻 walk backwards and jump off. Deku run over and look down then see 𝐒𝐻 on another roof and think, wow. Nana says, he's good. Deku walk down to 𝐴𝐻 and says, hey dad. 𝐒𝐻 knows. 𝐴𝐻 cough BLD and says, he know what? Deku look at him and says, OFA and AFO. 𝐻 look down and says, how? Deku says, well I didn't tell him I think he just smart. 𝐻 sigh and says, does he what too? Know anything? Deku smiles and says, no he doesn't for some reason. 𝐻 nod and says, okay I will tell Nizu now thank you my boy. Deku nod and says, I will leave you now dad. 𝐻 says, oh no my boy you can stay here. Meanwhile with 𝐻𝐻 lands on the top for a roof and think, okay let's see if we can find that after run past a old warehouse and think, let check it out. Walk in it all quiet and 𝐻𝐻 yells out, anyone here? 𝐻𝐻 hear a gun about to fire and more out for the way then 7 people drop down and the one in the middle says, why spread time hunting down the person you want to kill when you can just lead he here? 𝐻𝐻 sigh and says, hey if heirs I only see 7 made it. The one in the middle says, well you see a Bart killed 3 all on one night. 𝐻𝐻 smiles and says, and I will kill 7 tonight. They all laugh and 𝐻𝐻 run and cut 2 in half and says, now they 5. The 2 men fall down. The one in the middle says, can we please kill him? One gown 4 arm and muscle then says, I will make it quick. Boss. One jump up and start shooting at 𝐻𝐻 while he tries dodging all the bullet and says, that all you got? The muscle guy tired to punch 𝐻𝐻 but 𝐻𝐻 cut 1 arm in half and put his scythe in the back for his head. The middle guy now pissed off says, let go. A bomb goes off and they all run away. 𝐻𝐻 runs up to a rooftops and breaths heavily saying, for to go and it all over. Meanwhile with everyone else 𝐻𝐻 says, of course Nizu I will talk to him later. 𝐻𝐻 turn off his phone and says, well that went well. Deku giggles and says, let go. 𝐻𝐻 and Deku walk into where everyone is and 𝐈 run up to Deku saying, daddy. Deku pick up 𝐈 and says, hi 𝗠𝐵ALL have you been good? 𝗫 nod and 𝐭𝐲 run up to Deku and says, Deku can I play with 𝗫? Deku put 𝗫 down and says, go play 𝗫. Mina ask, where 𝐻𝐻? Then they hear a big bang and all get down and Aizawa says, I don't think it here. Everyone look out the window to see smoke and fire in the air. 𝗫 and 𝗬𝗲 run up to Deku and 𝗫 says, will we be okay daddy? 𝗫 pat the back of her and 𝗬𝗲 head saying, it okay we will be fine I am here. The kid clam down. Aizawa think, be okay kid. Mirko says, do me and the pro go and help. Aizawa says, no let the local deal with it. All sit down and turn on the TV with the new reporter saying, we have no information yet on the explosion that just happened but no one have been in that building for months. Pro think it was a bomb but in saying that no one was hurt or injured, everyone sigh in relief. And Aizawa says, okay I think that enough excitement for one day. Everyone nod and 𝗫 walk over to Mirio and says, can I stay with Deku tonight? At the same time 𝗬𝗲 walk over to Mandalay and says, can I stay at Deku tonight? Mirio and Mandalay both says, if it okay with Deku then yes. Both run over and says, can I stay with you tonight? Deku smiles and says, of course you two can. They both hug him and says, thank you Mr. Deku. Meanwhile with 𝐻𝐻 walk into 2 room and take off everything. But his underwear 𝗎𝐻 think, where the F at that first aid. 𝗎𝐻 look around and find one and says, this will do. 𝗎𝐻 took out some bullies out for him and wrap himself up and lay down on the floor in his own BLD thinking, F I need to be careful. Satan says, really wow. 𝗎𝐻 think, go F yourself. 𝗎𝐻 hear knocking on his door and he get up then Aizawa say, you back? 𝗎𝐻 stay quiet then Aizawa says, I know you're in they. Aizawa open the door. 𝗎𝗻 think, they. 𝗎𝗻 quickly put on some shorts and Aizawa say, did you have anything to do with the F? 𝗎𝗻 smiles and says, hi sir. Aizawa sigh and say, okay lay down, 𝐲 look at him and say, it fine, 𝐬𝐽 push 𝐲 onto the floor and say, bullshit you're bleeding out let me help you, 𝐲 sigh and says, fine only because I don't have a choice, 𝐬𝐽 sit next to him and says, I thought you got rid for quirks, 𝐲 laugh a little and says, a gun is not a quirk, 𝐬𝐽 pull hard and says, or a bomb I'm guessing, 𝐲 laugh a bit more and says, yeah well I didn't know they had a bomb, 𝐬𝐽 sigh and says, okay I need joke, 𝐲 says confused why? 𝐬𝐽 says, I need to get some more bullets out, 𝐲 sigh and says, okay get Momo and May, 𝐬𝐽 confused ask, why? 𝐲 yells, so you can get the put and you have a better look at it, 𝐬𝐽 nod and says, I need 𝗓𝗓, Deku and Tiger to hold you down, 𝐲 on the floor says, I don't care, 𝗓𝗓 walking in the hallway 𝐬𝐽 jump out and says, 𝗓𝗓 okay good you're here go get joke, Momo and May okay, 𝗓𝗓 nod and run to the girl's side 𝗬𝐽 call Deku and yells through the phone, I need you at 𝗲 room now, 𝗬𝐽 then see Tiger walk in the hallway 𝗬𝗽 says, Tiger I need you come here, Tiger run over and open the door. And says, the hell happened to you, the only people that know he is a vigilante is deku-𝗵𝗵, Midnight and 𝗬𝗽 𝗲 sigh and says, I will tell you later, with 𝗓𝗓 open the door and yells, joke, May and Momo 𝗬𝗽 need you, joke asks confused, I don't know he just need you quick, they nod and go to 𝗲 room with 𝗓𝗃 think, okay now that 𝐒𝐽𝐽𝐃 and 𝗂𝐃 are asleep I can watch TV for a bit. Ring ring Deku put up his phone and hear, I need you at 𝗲 room now, Deku run out to 𝗲 room and see Momo, May, joke and 𝗓𝗓 all running to 𝗲 room to they all walk in and Momo says, oh god are you okay? May gets socked and joke says, 𝗬𝗽 what going on, Deku says, 𝗲 are you good, 𝗬𝗽 says, not now Momo make some first aid May I need your help to get the bullets out and joke I need you to make him laugh 𝗓𝗓 hold one arm Tiger hold the other arm Deku you got legs. Momo make the first aid and everyone nod and 𝗬𝗽 holding his head says, now 𝗲 this is going to hurt a lot, 𝗲 says, I fingered that, 𝗲 start laughing and May start taking out bullets while 𝗲 says, 𝐵 gentle𝗲, May says, trying I didn't know I was going to be taking out bullets today. After all the bullets get taken out 𝗬𝗽 wrap him up and says, okay now try not to get shot, joke says, why did you get shot, 𝗲 after telling them what happened 𝗬𝗽 says, you killed 6 people, 𝗲 looked down and says, yes but I need to otherwise the circle continues, 𝗬𝗽 nods and says, okay you can kill if they are trying or are hurting others got it, 𝗲 nod and says, I rarely do kill but when I do it for a reason Momo says, so you're a vigilante how is it 𝗲 says, oh the same as a hero but you're seen as someone who it not doing the right thing. May says, god damn you scared me I thought you died, 𝗲 smiles and says, I am not dying on you people yet but you all need sleep, 𝗬𝗽 nod and says, yes. You should go back to your rooms Deku the kid should be worried by now, Deku smiles and says, it okay I put them to sleep before you called, 𝗬𝗽 nod and says, okay don't tell anyone just says I need to ask some questions okay? They all nod and leave but 𝗬𝗽 and 𝗲 says, you can go sir, 𝗬𝗽 look at him and says, I just want to make sure you are good, 𝗲 smiles and says, fine go, 1 in the morning 𝗬𝗽 yelling, okay everyone on the bus let go, everyone get on the bus and 𝗲 says, okay we are going to my school today to show you around, everyone look at him and Mina says, do we need to do work, 𝗲 smiles and says, no we do not, everyone yells, yay, 𝗲 laugh and says, okay clam down everyone we are just going to see other classes and see how they train and fight, AM says, oh yes UA sister location I've been meaning to see how they have been going, 𝗲 smiles and says, well we are here. Everyone get off the bus and get meet by 2 teacher 𝗲 look at them and says, sir miss, teacher. 1 smiles but annoyed says, 𝗲 roll his eyes and the teacher 1 grab his arm and wipers in his ear, roll your eyes at me 1 more time I dare you, teacher 1 let go and 𝗲 says, okay let go and see my class, 𝗲 open the door and says, oh look the dumbass is here, the class laugh at him and 𝗲 says, good to see you to 𝗧𝗏, 𝗧𝗏 walk out to him and says, I said call me Mr. David, 𝗲 roll his eyes and says, anyways we have guests here for the class. No one heard that just then 𝗬𝗽 walk in and says, hello I am 𝗬𝗽 class 1A homeroom teacher, 𝗧𝗏 smiles and says, good to meet you and I am sorry to inform you that you guide will be replaced with a less useless one, 𝗬𝗽 shocked to hear this says, calmly, and why is that, 𝗧𝗏 says, well you see 𝗲 here is under arrest we were giving him a month to show UA around but he is just too deadly to be not in jail I am sorry, everyone hear this and walk in 𝗬𝗽 says look pissed off, who will be replacing 𝐻𝐻𝐽? Says, why hello 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵. Well, another one done. I hope you liked it, and is they to much 𝐻𝐻𝐽? If so, says I just wanted to add him to add something. Guess who the frail is? Recap. Says, why hello 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵. Everyone Japan plus 𝐻𝐻 look, and they all yells 𝗵𝗏. 𝗧𝗏 says, oh yes, we thought we should make our top kid at the school take you. 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵 look at him and says, did you read his file? 𝐻𝐻 pissed off and says, yes they have, and you can kill me after I am done with you if you let me take them. Not him. 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵 pissed off says, you are dead to me. 𝗵𝗏 says, aw come on guys, I am not that bad. Deku look at him pissed off and start posing up, but 𝐻𝐻 touch him and says, no, let me do this, I can have him afterwards. 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵 yells, you pervert on the girls, you almost killed Deku and you tired to blow up the dorm. 𝗵𝗏 says, come on the girl. 𝐻𝐻 turn off his quirk and let Deku upcut him. Deku yells, finish that I dare you. 𝐻𝐻 go to take out his scythe. 𝗧𝗏 says, pull that out and I will taking you down. 𝐻𝐻 sigh and says, okay, how about this, I fight him. 𝗧𝗏 says, okay fine, but you can't use your quirk, guns and your scythe. 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵 look at him and says, that not fair. 𝐻𝐻 look at 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵 and says, no it fine, okay, let go at the combat area. 𝐈𝐧𝐻𝐵 put a USB in a computer after calling 𝗎𝐬 to tell him what happened. Him says, is he seeing this? 𝗬𝗏 nod the rest for the teachers and pros nod. 𝗧𝗏 says, okay 𝐻𝐻 you hurt him, you are have one way to jail. All the teacher from Australia you laugh and the kid yells, go die 𝐻𝗫/F you 𝗫/burn in hell 𝐻𝐻. Everyone from Japan is shocked and 𝗬𝗏 think, F this. 𝗬𝗏 says, 𝗎𝗬 can he go all out? 𝗎𝗬 though the phone, let him. 𝗬𝗏 smirk and walk into the control room and lean into the mic and says, go all out 𝗻𝗁. 𝗧𝗏 says, 𝗬𝗏 what are you doing? And 𝗻𝗁 don't listen to him. 𝗻𝗁 roll his eyes and says, well I see 𝗬𝗏 as a teacher more than you, so I am going all out. 𝗬𝗏 says calmly, start. 𝗵𝗏 tries to throw his ball at 𝗻𝗁, but 𝗻𝗁 just moves out for the way and 𝗬𝗏 says, come on, is that the best you can do? 𝗻𝗁 smiles and drop kick 𝗵𝗏, then says, no, just toying with him sir. 𝗧𝗏 think, this is bullshit, I got a plan. 𝗻𝗁 axe kick 𝗵𝗏, then 𝗧𝗏 says, my class and teachers can fight 𝗻𝗁 to go. 𝗬𝗏 look at him and says, what? 𝗻𝗁 smiles and says, okay then I can use my quirk and weapons, if you cheat I cheat. 𝗬𝗏 says, someone get this man his scythe and guns. Everyone drop down from Australia and 𝗻𝗁 open up his hands, then says, so who first? Deku run into where 𝗻𝗁 left his weapons and he finds a scythe and guns, thinking, give them hell please. Deku run back out to 𝗻𝗁 holding off 25 people on his own, then Deku yells catch. Deku then throws the scythe and guns, then 𝗻𝗁 says, okay did you get the bullets too? Deku look and yells, no you got it for now. 𝗻𝗁 nod and put the guns on his sides, then sang, now the fun begins. says, he is good. Midnight says, you good indeed. Joke says, shame he needed to put up with this behavior. 𝗎𝗎 says, in my eyes he is in class 1A now. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 says, should we help him? 𝗎𝗎 says, not yet, I want to see him use that scythe and guns. 𝗻𝗁 using a kickboxing style on hand-to-hand people with his scythe for the rage people, he running right at them, dodging it what they shoot/throw at him. 𝗻𝗁 after knocking out 10 out for 25 look around and says, whoever give up can leave. No one more, and giggles and says, okay let do this. Deku throw 20 mags for bullets and yells, hope that good. 𝗻𝗁 put the mags on him and says, okay I think Mr. Scythe can go away. 𝗻𝗁 take out his guns and 𝗬𝗏 says, you can shoot at them. 𝗻𝗁 smiles and says, make sure Eri and Kota are not looking. Mandalay turn Kota away from the battlefield and Mirio does the same with Eri. They nod, then 𝗻𝗁 start to open fire on people, aiming for the legs and arms, saying, I can actually use the guns now. After everyone drop in pain, 𝗻𝗁 put the guns on his side and 𝗬𝗏 come down, then says, good job you win. Then 𝗵𝗏 pull a gun out and yells, this is bullshit, you die grow. 𝗻𝗁 shoot but only hit his shoulder, then 𝗻𝗁 pull out his gun and shoot the gun in his hand, saying, learn how to use a gun first dumps. 𝗬𝗏 says, call the nurses in. 𝗻𝗁 then yells, Deku you can have him now. 𝗬𝗏 walk back to the class, then Mina ask, is he coming with us back to Japan? 𝗬𝗏 sigh and says, I don't know, but I think 𝗎𝗎 wanna ask him. Deku drop down and slowly walk over to 𝗵𝗏, powering up to 95%. He can use 95% because he been learning in his mind every night. Then a copper pick 𝗵𝗏 and drop down 2 people. 𝗻𝗁 know who they are and yells, get everyone out now. Deku go, I got this. 𝗬𝗏 yells, 𝗻𝗁 who are they? 𝗻𝗁 yells, the F hero unit, get everyone out, I got this, don't come back until they know shooting or blades clashing. Got it. Aizawa nod and the copper leaves. Then Deku run up to Aizawa and says, "Are we leaving him?" Aizawa nod and yells, "Everyone out now." That includes the pros go. Everyone leaves and Gil look at them and says, "Why did you take him?" The guy in front says, "Not your business, kid, but we need to kill you." The sniper guy go to the roof and the guy in front gown 4 more arm and pull out 6 sword. Gil think, "Great, I need to deal with the sniper first, but this guy not going to let me." Satan says, "We believe in you." Gil smiles and think, "I know." Gil then pull out his guns, reload them, put them on his sides, then pull out his scythe saying, "You too will die." The sniper yells, "Hold him off so I can get a shoot." The sword guy yells, Yeah, I got it." Then he swing his 6 sword, but Gil block all for them but then hear the sniper start shooting. Gil sweep the leg making him fall. Then Gil pull out 1 gun and shoot in the head 12 times and reload and says, "Now you but that shoot me." The sniper start running around in a circle shooting, shots miss while Gil put away and pull out the second gun and try shooting him. Then the sniper hit Gil in the livers. Then sniper stop and says, "Too slow, kid." Gil look up and shoot him in the head, then walk over to him and put 11 more in the head. Aizawa comes in and says, "Gil, you good?" Gil look at him and says, "He shot me in the goddamn liver." Deku come in and hold his liver saying, "I got it." Aizawa, can the nurse? Everyone walk in without the kids. Then the nurse come and says, "He in bad shape, he need to go to the hospital now." Gil get up and says, "No, I am fine, just do what we did last night." The nurse says, "We need to treat them too." Gil get up and says, "I am fine, I just need to get wrap up." Aizawa sigh and says, "Go, you will be fine." Gil sigh and says, "Fine, but you're coming with me." Aizawa nod and says, "Okay, then get everyone home, we will be there later." The nurse says, "Okay, you will be out by the afternoon for sure." After everyone get back to the hotel, Mina says, "Wow, Gil, then though a lot today." says, "Yes, and we do not know the outcome for where Gil is going to go after he get out." Deku punch the wall and yells, "If only we were they." Midnight says, "Clam down, he didn't want us to get hurt and it is his fight." Deku sigh and says, "I need a walk." Deku walk away and think, "Night I dying did a number on him." Lita says, "I never seen him like this." Mirko says, "I bet he read reports on him, he always clam. Why was that about?" Says, "The bay he won against Overhaul is the same day Night died. I think he feel like he could for saved him too." Mirio says, "I think you're right, have you said anything to anyone?" The class shakes they head. Momo says, "I will go and ask if he is okay." Says, "No, I will, I am his father after all." Momo nod and walk to Deku room, then says, "Hey son, you good?" Deku come to the door and says, "I guess I don't really know." Says, "Talk to me about it." Come in and they both sit down. Then Deku says, "I don't want to lose anyone else, but I know I can't save everyone." Taken back says, "My boy, all you can do is your best, and the best for you is the best hero." Deku says, "I know, but he could if help Gil." Hug Deku and says, "Gil would not want you to be they if you got hurt. Instead for him, I think he would be hunting down the hero unit, and if anyone got in his way they would die." Deku smiles and says, "Yeah, you're right, I am just worried that all." Says, "Wanna call 𝐒𝐭𝐴?" Deku smiles and says, "No, I don't want to die." Laugh and says, "Me to my boy, me too." Deku says, "Well, still going for that walk." Says, "Let Momo go with you, she looked worried." Deku says, "Worried? Just tell them I am fine." They walk down and says, "Okay, you sure, my boy?" Deku nod and walk outside. Sigh and says, "He is fine, just needs some air." Everyone sigh in relief. Deku walk outside, then hear, "Problem child, what are you doing?" Then he hear, "Sir, really?" Deku look at Aizawa and Gil, then says, "Gil, you're okay?" Gil smiles and says, "Of course I am, what you thought I was going to die." Aizawa says, "He's strong, so don't worry." "So now where were you going?" Deku smiles and says, "For I walk." Gil says, "I will come with." Aizawa says, "You need rest." Gil smiles and says, "I am fine, plus we are going out tonight." Aizawa sigh and says, "Okay, fine, Deku, if he get hurt send him back." Deku nod and says, "I will, sir." Aizawa walk away and Gil says, "Let go." Aizawa walk into the boy side for the hotel where everyone is, then everyone yells, "Where Gil?" Aizawa rubbing his head, "He is fine, just going of a walk with Deku." Everyone sigh in relief and joke says, "Okay, I think you done too much today, Aizawa, go and sleep." Aizawa says, "Okay, fine, everyone get ready, when Gil get back he will tell you everything you need to know." Joke smiles and says, "Okay, go to sleep." Aizawa walk up to his room with Joke, then Aizawa says, "Why are you here?" Joke says smiling, "Making sure you sleep and hot stay up." Aizawa lay down and says, "Okay, whatever." Aizawa fall asleep and Joke think, "So cute." One Gil walking next to Deku says, I am fine, don't worry, I've been through worse. Deku nod and says, okay fine, you made your point, don't worry. Gil chuckles a little bit and says, so anything you want to know? Deku asks worried. What the plan? They two still left. Gil says worried. Not two, they now three I think. Deku says pissed off. You don't think he? Gil sigh and says, it is a possibility and so far that what the fact says that he is, but I need to get back out. Deku clam down and says, okay, tell the others. Gil says, no, I shouldn't have told you, I will only tell your teachers and the pro. Deku says, why though? Gil sigh and says, you're all here to relax. And this is happening. Deku pat him on the back and says, it okay, no one blame you. Gil smiles and says, shall we go back now? Deku nod and says, we should, you need to tell everyone when we get back. Gil nod and says, yeah I know. When they got back to the hotel and got everyone it to the same room, Aizawa says, okay, say what you need to, says Gil. Gil smiles and says, well, we are going out for dinner to a nice 5-star place and wear something nice. Deku says, we were meant to bring suits. All the boys from class 1A and the male pro says, yeah, we were meant to bring suits. Aizawa says, we were meant to bring clothes. Joke sigh and says, I am not even going to touch what Aizawa said. Gil sigh and says, I thought the guys would not being the suits, so I got some, and Aizawa, we are going shopping tomorrow. Aizawa sigh and says, okay, now that done, I didn't even mean that, but tell us everything that you told me. Gil sigh and says, I thought you forgot about that. Aizawa sigh and says annoyed, no, I did not. Gil, now tell everyone. After explaining everything and getting dressed, Aizawa says, you don't think he would? Gil sigh and says, it that or they turning him into a Nomo, but he is not powerful enough for that unless I need to go. Aizawa garb him and says, what is it? Gil look at him and says, we are going dinner now. Aizawa says, okay, is everyone ready? Everyone get on the bus, and Gil says, okay, everyone here. Everyone nod and says, okay, good, now I am going to be at another table. Doing thing. Aizawa, you have my card and number, so text me when you're ready to go. Aizawa asks confused, okay, but why? Gil says, not important, have a good night without me. Deku says, you sure you do? What, anyone with you? KR nod and says, yeah, we can come, it's you. Aizawa annoyed says, leave him alone, don't question what he is doing, you are here to take a break. Gil nod and says, yes, sleeping bag is right, you are here on break, so kick back and relax, so don't worry about what I am doing. Aizawa says, okay, now that out for the way, what are we doing tomorrow? Gil sigh and says, well, we are going to the mall and I'm showing you around the area. All the kids cheer and the pro/teacher all smiled. Then Aizawa says, will they be groups? Gil nod and says, yes they will be, but more on that later, but if you're all lucky we can go to the beach. People cheered and Aizawa says, look like you put a lot for effort into this, Gil. Gil says, I am sewing a bunch for kid around a place they have not been before. And for the older people they need this, so some nice relaxing is great. At dinner Gil walk off to a booth table and Aizawa says, okay, let's start this. The girls sit over on that table and the boys are sitting over here, 2 round table to different areas for the place, and Joke says, come on Aizawa, let them be kid by themselves. Aizawa look at her dead in the eye and says, if I leave then alone for 1 second the whole world blow up. Joke says, Aizawa, they not that bad. Deku nod and says, oh no, he is right. Mina says, yeah, we will find out a way to blow something up at nominal Deku, but we don't talk about that. Momo says, oh yes, we are quite the group for kid. Joke look down and says, I was trying to help you, kid. Denki says, oh no, don't, we will kill something. Aizawa look at them and says, then why do you all do dumb see when you know? Mina says, oh that it fun. Aizawa sigh and says, I make my own 6 cents for nothing. Midnight says, the hell are you talking about? Aizawa says, if I wake up and I can feel something dumb about to happen because for class 1, Denki says, that how you get me every time I try to blow up beans in the microwave. Joke look at the kid and says, okay, you're right this time, Aizawa. Aizawa sigh and says, when it come to 1A I am away, right, but can we go? At the girls' table they all go and sit down, then they order they food and drinks while waiting. Midnight says, so who have a crush here? All the girls go red and Midnight make jokes about it. Then Joke says, do you? Midnight? Midnight goes red and says, go F Aizawa. Joke says, I don't mind if it do. The pro heroes says, F new. It. The Mina yells, I got I plan. Joke says, no Mina, I got it. Midnight says, that what you said when you were 16. Joke, you're 25 now. Joke look down and says, don't remind me. Momo says, Aizawa is more for Itsundra than Jiro. Jiro says, go F yourself. Momo hit her over the head and says, language, and I would rather a PP in me and you know it. 𝗔𝗂 says in an annoyed tone, language my butt. Mina says, what but? 𝗔𝗂 put the middle finger up and 𝗧 says, clam your tips 𝗔𝗂. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 says, what tips 𝗧? 𝗔𝗂 says, F you guys. Momo says, okay girl let not talk about how 𝗔𝗂 is flat. 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗵 says, but the flatter than 𝗬𝗏. Mina just says, god dame no need to kill her. 𝗬𝗏 ask in the most nice says every, what does flat mean? Joke says, something you will learn when you're older. Midnight says, what 𝗔𝗂 is hun? 𝗬𝗏 says, are you talking about tips? Everyone chalks and Joke says, where did you learn that word? 𝗬𝗏 says nicely, on the plan here. Joke says, okay whatever you don't says that word in font for anyone. 𝗬𝗏 looked down and says, oh I kind told Coda those words. 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗵, Ragdoll and Mandalay think, oh F. Joke says, did you now? 𝗬𝗏 nod and says, was it nit meant to I am sorry. Joke says, oh no it fine 𝗬𝗏 why don't you go and play with Coda? 𝗬𝗏 nod and says, okay. 𝗬𝗏 run off and Joke says, okay let hope they don't tell anyone. Everyone nod and Midnight says, I feel like it my fault. The lady says, oh it 100% your fault. Everyone agrees and Mina says, well who do you think will find out first? Everyone says, 𝗕𝗏𝗁. Mina nod and says, I thought so. One at the boy table says, so who do we all like these days? Deku say, well Coda like 𝗬𝗏. Coda say, do not. Aizawa say, Bogi. Deku says, yeah but Coda F my daughter before 18 without a RBB you are dead. Coda yells, I'm not going to F her. Denki says, you know what that is. Coda says, yes I do Pikachu. Now shut up. Deku says, I don't want a grandchild yet. Coda yells, I am not very. Aizawa say, you will. 𝗬𝗏 walk in and say, I daddy can me and Coda play. Deku smiles and say, of course you can. 𝗬𝗏 walk out and Tiger say, go get her. Then throw some condoms. Coda says, we are 6. Deku says, you better use them if you are doing it. Coda says, I hate you all. Coda walk off and Tiger says, that was something. Aizawa says, so you think he will? Deku says, one day yes. One after dinner. Aizawa text, Gil, we are going. Gil text, okay go I will see you all later. Aizawa text, okay Gil see you later. Gil look up from his phone and says, sorry about that so let me get this right you all want to be vigilantes like me while I am gone. The man in the middle says, yes we want to be the next Black Hoods. Gil nod and says, okay but you all need your own weapons make sure you have guns and a blade for some type you cannot copy my weapons and change the color for the helmet got it? The right side guy says, okay any rules? Gil nod and says, only kill villains no one else try your best to make sure everyone is safe in the city. They all nod and Gil says, until the end for this month you do not start got it? They nod and Gil says, okay good now if you want to be a hero then be careful about this whole vigilante thing. They nod and the left girl says, thank you for letting us do this. Gil nod and says, anyone else that want to join give them the rundown and look at their track record and also they fight abilities. The middle guy says, of course we will see you around you know where to find us. Gil nod and says, okay you can do whatever I need to eat. The middle guy says, do you mind if we eat with you? Gil smiles and says, of course not my brothers and sisters. After eating the 3 people walk away and leave and go down an alleyway and change into his hero outfit and start his run around the city then he find a lad then he walk in only to see 10 gnomes like the one at the 𝗧𝗏𝗏 and one small gnomu in the middle in a big tube. Gil think, this is not good I knew I should have got my bomb today but oh no they too big and I don't think I will get rid of the gnomes it will just let them out. See what do I do? Then he hear yelling, this better work Doc he is the best person for this and I don't want to work with them any longer than I need to. Doc says, yes sir this will work I am 99% sure of it. The men yelling, I hope so or at you in that tube next. Gil think, okay I need to go now. Gil come back to the hotel and punch a wall and says, SHT what I am going to do F and I need to keep this from UA and the police. In the morning Gil walk down and Aizawa says, oh good you're up shall we go? Gil nods and says, yeah let go now pack to for the beach. Everyone come down with bags and Aizawa says, okay the groups are. Gil sigh and says, F it go with whoever you like. Aizawa shut up. They all cheer and Aizawa says, fine let go. On the bus Gil says, okay if they a issue come find me if you can't find me ask a teacher or pro if they is a villain attack do not fight I repeat do not fight do you all understand? Aizawa says, what about me and the pros? Gil sigh and says, Aizawa listen do not fight if I wanted the pros to fight I would say but in saying that I will fight. Joke says, but you don't have weapons. Gil take out his scythe and guns then says, you were saying? Joke nod and says, fair. Gil put the weapons away and says, Okay, we are here at 1 o'clock, we meet at the food court for lunch, then we go to the beach. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, okay, you all got it, let go. Everyone nod and start walking off them. Gil think, now to find some info. Gil walk into a bar and says, I need info about a lab. Deku walk around looking at stores by himself, then come up and says, my boy, why are you alone? Deku turn around and says, oh, 𝗬𝗏𝗏 is with the girls and 𝗧𝗏𝗏 is trying to keep everyone safe, so I am just looking around. Them think, dad powers turn on, and says, my boy, why don't we look around together like father and son? Deku with teardrops in his eye says, I would love to. Says, what did I say about crying? Deku laugh though the tears don't, because it will make you cry. Nod and says, so where will you like to go after? Looking around, the time is 12:55 a.m. says, my boy, we need to go to the food court now. Deku nod and says, okay dad. And Deku walk into the food court with saying, we are here. Gil walk in and says, okay, everyone get something to eat here or you will not eat until dinner, and I'm looking at you, Denki. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 mumbles to himself, I wonder what his mom and dad think if I adopted him. Wait, no, joke would not like that, Denki says, but they so many choices. Gil sigh and says, what a happy meal, Eri, Koda, Denki, and 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, yes please. Joke sigh and says, you nit having a happy meal, 𝐈𝐧𝐻. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 look down and says, oh, what about Denki? Joke says, he is nit mine. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 blushes and says, what? Jokes think about what she said and says, let go. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 and Joke walk off and Mina says, Denki, you're nit having a happy meal. Denki look at her like not my pick and says, but why? Eri says in the most sassy way, because you don't need a happy meal for your Pikachu head. Deku hug Eri and Koda say, marry me please. Everyone was saying, oh, him say, oh, Inko going to love her. Deku nod dubby. Not my pick and says, but why? Eri says in the most sassy way, because you don't need a happy meal for your Pikachu head. Deku hug Eri and Koda say, marry me please. Everyone was saying, oh, say, oh, Inko going to love her. Deku nod while hugging Eri. Siro pat Denki on the back saying, it okay bro, let go get a pizza. Denki nod and Deku says, please tell me someone filmed that. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 says, I did. Everyone says, send it to us please. Deku smiles at Eri and says, go play with Koda. Eri nod and says, okay daddy, come on Koda, let go eat with the big three and the PP cats. They all walk away and Gil says, F savage. After lunch and getting to the beach, everyone was dressed, then Deku walk out in a pair for budgie smugglers that got him. Then Deku says, okay, I am here. The girls but Joke look at him and have a bleeding nose and is red. Then says, see, I knew I would look good on you, my boy. Deku says, yeah, but they a bit tight. Nana says, how did you even get your PP in that? Deku think, does it look like I know? Says, they meant to be, my boy. Deku smiles and says, oh, okay, that good. Denki says, how did you get your body to look that? Everyone was dressed. Then Deku walk out in a pair for budgie smugglers that got him. Then Deku says, okay, I am here. The girls but Joke look at him and have a bleeding nose and is red. Then says, see, I knew I would look good on you, my boy. Deku not my pick and he have green hair. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 look at him and says, what we hell we need to fix the UA outfit if it is hidden that. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 take a pic and send to 𝗧𝗏 saying, sir, that is Deku. 𝗧𝗏 texted, I am sorry, but are you sure? 𝐈𝐧𝐻 text, yes sir it is. 𝗧𝗏 says, god damn, but I need to go to a meeting, I will talk later. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 text, okay, see you later sir. After a nice day at the beach, Gil on the bus saying, okay, now we are going to a pizza place tonight where whatever and have a good time. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, and you will be at. Gil smiles and says, with all for you. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, oh okay, that new. Gil smiles and says, yeah, go F yourself. Deku yells, don't you mean Miss Joke? Gil giggles and says, oh yes, sorry, I mean go F Miss Joke. Joke and 𝐈𝐧� red as hell. Then everyone start yelling, kiss kiss kiss. 𝐈𝐧� look around and says, F it. Gil on the bus saying, okay, now we are going to a pizza place tonight where whatever and have a good time. 𝐈𝐧� says, and you will be at. Gil smiles and says, with all for you. 𝐈𝐧� says, oh okay, that new. Gil smiles and says, yeah, go F yours one, not my pick. Everyone yells, yeah, way I get it. 𝐈𝐧�. Deku says, dame sir, you might not die alone. Joke bite her lips and says, oh, he was never dying alone. Midnight says, oh god, everyone get something to block out noise. Momo says, I can just F Deku then. All the other girls, Joke say, that was my plan. Deku blinking, I am sorry. Sue says, F it, who do you like? All the girls. Joke say, Yeah, who do you like the most? Deku yells. Someone help. says, I would, but I know not to cross a woman and her crush. Aizawa kissing joke says, I am a bit busy. Deku glues and says, well, I find you all nice girl and I can't pick one, so can you all share me? Momo says, anyone not okay with that? No one says anything. Jiro says, and you stare to him just then. Deku sigh and says, well, I kind knew I would need to start one because for 𝗔𝗵𝗵𝗏 say, so how will we share you? Deku says, one girl every day. I will start with my class, then teacher/pro. Eri say, does that mean I have 18 moms? One doesn't know about Nana. Deku pick her up and say, yes it does. Eri smiles and say, I what a brother. Deku look at Eri, then the girls who all giving him the eye. I'm going to F you. Look, Gil smiles and says, we are here people, // another one done. Yay, it feel like it took so long, and do you want me to show you what plus the girls and Deku having fun? Or the big villain fight during dinner? Deku says, okay, how should we order this? Gil says, with the people who work here. Aizawa sigh and says, I think he mean with the girls. Gil look at him and says, your point. Mina say, whoever have a crush on Deku first go first, and so on. They all look around and Deku says, okay then who first? They all look at Uraraka and Momo says, I like that idea. All the girls nod and Tsu says, you're up first. Uraraka have fun. Uraraka blushes and says, oh okay me, do we have a plans tomorrow? Gil sigh and says, well me and the boys, but Deku are going out to whatever. Aizawa says, Deku you can fit in like 3 dates a max with other stuff. Deku says, sir, I don't think I will be in stuff. All the girls says, that what you think? Deku glups and says, what? Aizawa says, you're going to get F harder than Joke tonight. Joke says, I would like to see you try. Deku says, okay, how should we order this? Gil says, with the people who work here. Aizawa sigh and says, I think he mean with the girls. Gil look at him and says, your point. Mina say, whoever have a crush on Deku first go first, and so on. They all look not my pick and look at Aizawa face. Aizawa then look at her excellent says, wait until we get back to the hotel. Deku says, oh, I don't want to hear about my teachers have. Aizawa yells, you're F midnight. Gil says, okay, I ordered the food while you all did that, so shut up Deku, I will go out and then make a plan for your 3 date a day. Deku says, thank you Gil. Aizawa says, you are not going out tonight. Gil says, I went out last night. Clam down. Aizawa say, you got shoot in the liver. Gil sigh and says, it fine, I will just try to scare them. Aizawa says, F it, you're not mine yet. Gil confused says, what the says, good one. Aizawa sigh and says, I will tell you later. After dinner and going back to the hotel, Gil get dressed and leaves. Think, I need to find the people. Deku lay down in his bedroom, then all the girls coming into his room with Mina saying, guess who here? Deku get up and says, oh, all my girlfriends, why are you here? Midnight says, guess. Deku glups and says, okay, I know why, but why not after our dates? Tsu says, the date are for later. Deku says, anyone going to stop the? They all says no, and Deku says, okay, so what? Your plan? Midnight says, we all F you different times at night during the week one-on-one. Deku says, so I need to F all for you every night? They all nod and Deku sigh and says, okay, who starts? Momo says, oh, we are still doing who had a crush on you first. Uraraka says, so that mean me? All the girls leave but Uraraka, and Deku says, are you sure about this? 2 lemons start now. Uraraka jump on top for him and says, oh yes Deku. Uraraka take off her shirt and rip off Deku's shirt, and Deku says, Uraraka clam down. Uraraka lick her lips and pull down his pants and says, my Deku, look how big you are. Deku looks scared and says, it too big for your awe. Uraraka stuck to 𝐒𝐩𝐁𝐵 him off. Deku gulping. After 5 minutes, Uraraka get up and take off your pants and underwear saying, that was good, now time for our first time. Uraraka slowly put it in and says, so big. Deku gulps and says, I think we should stop. Uraraka starts to go faster and faster, then Deku says, I am going to come. Uraraka says, come in me. Deku yells, F I am coming. Uraraka goes blank and pass out, and Deku yells, Uraraka, are you okay? Mina says, I think you made her pass out with that big thing they. Deku says, oh hey Mina, what you doing here? Mina take off her clothes and says, what does it look like? End of lemon. And in the morning Deku walk down and Aizawa say, you good? Deku look at him and says, do you have a sleeping bag I can use? Aizawa says confused, why? Am says, are you okay my boy? Deku says, Didn't sleep last night, I just need to sleep. Aizawa yells, girls. Midnight says, yes. Aizawa sigh and says, what happened to him? Midnight says, we F him all night and we will every night. Says, my boy, how are your hips working? Deku says, I have no idea. Aizawa walking away saying, nope, I am done. Gil walk down and says, so you can do whatever until 5:30, we are going to a convert at 6 o'clock. They all nod and joke says, so how did you go last night? Gil sigh and says, I need sleep. Deku and Aizawa says, I will join you. Joke sigh and says, Aizawa, you slept all night. Aizawa look at her and says, your point. Deku says, I didn't sleep. Aizawa says, that because you wear F all night? Tsu says, worth it. Mina says, but he can walk. Deku says, I can kind walk, my hips are still on fire. Mirko says, you broke me and the other older girls. Says, can I stop hearing about how my son had? Aizawa sigh and says, I am with AM on this one. The girl sigh and says, fine. 5:30 they did. If all. Gil sigh and says, everyone here. Aizawa says, to bad, let go. They all get on the bus and Gil says, I will be. They just not they, I will be out. Aizawa says, why don't you take a break? Gil sigh then says, to much to do. Deku says, come on, what the worst that can happen? Gil says, it fine, I don't need to go. And Aizawa here the our tickets. Gil give Aizawa the tickets. The bus stops, then Aizawa says, okay, we will go now. They leave, then Gil get dressed and think, need to find how they are making them. They all walk into the concert and Walk, who is looking worried, says, what do you mean you can't come? What do you mean you are leaving? Oh, the F you. The person hang up and Deku says, is everything okay? Says, no, the leader singer set left and we can't get a replacement now. Jiro says, Deku, you can sing, how about you do it? Deku says, what, me? Says, are you good, kid? Everyone behind him says, yes. Says, okay, my name is Blade, I am the drummer for the group. Deku says, my is Deku, I am from Japan UA as a hero in training. Blade says, oh nice, is it okay if you sing for us? Aizawa says, okay with me. Says, same. Deku smiles and says, if it help you guys then okay. Blade says, thank you so much, come on, let meet the rest for the band. Deku nod and says, okay, see you all later. Blade and Deku run off with Aizawa saying, do good. Blade says, okay guys, they've been a change in plans. Deku here is our new lead singer and from Japan because John left. Says, F John, also nice to meet you, I am Jimmy and I the guitarist. Says, I am Storm the bass player. Deku smiles and says, nice to meet you all. Storm says, okay, anything you can't sing. Deku says, I can sing anything. Jimmy says, okay, here, tell us if you want to play something else. Deku smiles and says, okay, let's start this. Storm says, you need to change your outfit first. Jimmy says, out the back, can't miss it. Deku says, oh yeah, of course, I will get dressed while you get ready. Oh, the F you. The person hang up and Deku says, is everything okay? Says, no, the leader singer set left and we can't get a replacement now. Jiro says, Deku, you can sing, how about you do it? Deku says, what, me? Says, are you good, kid? Everyone not my pick and without the mask. Storm says, you look good. Jimmy says, yeah you do, and get ready. They walk onto the stage and hear cheers, then it go quiet when the see Deku, then Deku yells, as you can all tell I am not John but left the band before the show, so let's start. Everyone start to cheer again, then they start to play for Not My Song. Everyone start to yells, more. Deku yells, okay, if you what more you get more. Storm get on a trumpet and nod, then they start Not My Song. Deku yells, who what more? Everyone cheered and Jimmy says, okay, let go, not my video. After the song everyone was yelling, another. Deku yells into the mic, okay, last one before a break. The band nod and start playing Not My Video. Everyone cheering and Deku yells, we will be back soon. The band walk off and Storm says, that was amazing, Deku. Jimmy says, yeah, you are really good. Deku chucks light and says, aw, thank you guys. Blade says, you are Ghardif. You were not being a hero, you could be a full-time singer. Deku sigh and says, I mean, if you guys move to Japan maybe I could be both. Storm says, we were thinking about that, doing that, but you would have way too much work being a hero and a singer. Deku smiles and says, it will be fine, what are your quirks anyways? Storm says, oh, I can make a storm. Blade says, I can turn anything into blades. Jimmy says, I can make any gun. Deku says, they so cool. Jimmy smiles and says, really, you think so? Deku nod and says, yeah, now let go back on. They all walk back on and Deku yells, let do it, not my video. Deku says, okay, let continue this show. Gil on the rooftop think, you're doing good, have fun while it lasts, and I better text 𝐈𝐧𝐻 that I won't be back until late. Gil pull out his phone and text. Sir, I won't be coming home until late, so don't hold up here. The place you are going for dinner at it is a barbecue place. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 text. I am not happy with you coming back later, but you win. For now, and dinner will be easy, thank you. Gil smiles and says, now time to find out what happening. Deku starts sing not my video. Deku says, that is all the time we have tonight. Thank you Australia for letting me play. Everyone cheers. Another. Deku look around and says, this the band okay with that? They all nod and Deku says, okay, let do this people last song for the night. Not my video. Everyone gone wild and Deku yells, thank you Australia, see you next time. They all walk off and Storm says, here the band number we will call if we need you and if you need help. Deku take the card and says, thank you, see you around. Deku walk to everyone and 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, okay, let go. They all get on the bus and Deku says, where Gil? 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, he going to be out for a bit later. says, when will he be home? The bus stop only to see a tiger run down the road at them. Bus Gil drop down and start fighting the tiger. The pros were about to get out and help, then they saw Gil cut the tiger in half and jumping onto the roof. Everyone walk out when the cops come to ask what happened. The cop sigh and says, a villain, we will look at what happened, but is everyone okay? Everyone nod and 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, okay. Back in the bus. On the bus 𝐈𝐧𝐻 texted Gil saying, the hell was that? At the barbecue place. And after dinner on the bus says, 𝐈𝐧𝐻, have you heard anything from Gil yet? 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, no I have not. I sure he fine. Midnight says, yeah I think he was fine with the tiger. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, that not what a worried about. They all talk on the bus when they got back. Deku and the girl went up to Deku's room and start doing stuff. Says, don't worry about Gil 𝐈𝐧𝐻, he will be fine. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 sigh and says, I guess you're right. They turn on the TV. It says, a spike in villain attacks for the past couple for days, forcing heroes to fight a lot more, and as they are still trying to hunt down the vigilante called the Dark Hood. Says, they hunting him down. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, seen so. The report says, the Dark Hood is very powerful and is on the run from the heroes for being a vigilante. As we speak, the heroes are fighting the Dark Hood. Everyone in the room says, Gil. They all sit and look while the TV shows Gil fighting pro heroes, not killing them or using his quirk. The reporter says, the heroes cannot get close to him and they won't let him run away. Gil yells, let me go, I am doing better work the UF pro in this country. Pro 1 says, we just want to talk. That all. Pro 2 yells, like hell we do, you are dead meat. Pro 3 says, everyone clam down, all you are doing is making him sacred. Pro 1 says, thank you. Now Dark Hood, we just want to ask some questions. Down with the police, okay? Pro 2 yells, then you will be locked up. Pro 3 says, shut up, he is not getting locked up. Pro 1 says, what do you? Says Dark Hood. Gil drop down and says, fine I will go, but put me in 𝐒𝐻𝗔𝗄𝐃, I will kill you. Says, what is he doing? 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, trying not to kill anyone. Pro 3 says, thank you, okay, turn the camera off now. The report says, cut the cameras. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, SHT, I wanted to see that. Says, wait until you need to fight what I made just for you. Says, shut up, let go, we will break him later. Pro 1 says, okay, can you take your mask for us? Gil says coldly, no I can't. Pro 2 yells, why the hell not? Pro 2 says, because he doesn't want to now deal with it. Pro 1 says, you know what, get you. Pro 2 yells, who, me? Gil put the gun to his head and says, yes, you out. Pro 2 walk out. Then Pro 1 says, you didn't need to do that. Gil turned to him and says, yeah I know, but he was giving me the. Pro 3 says, okay, now we have some questions for you. Gil sit down and says, ask away. Pro 1 sigh and says, why do you do this? Gil says, to protect the people who need protecting. Pro 3 ask, have you ever killed anyone who was not a villain? Gil says, no, and I only kill villain that are too crazy to go to jail. Pro 1 says, your name is cleared, you can go now. Gil sigh and says, okay, that fine, but if I have follows, don't hunt them down like me, make them sure they are cleared for anything. Pro 1 and 3 nod. Then Pro 1 says, of course we will see you around. Dark Hood. Gil walk out and walk down to the end for the hallway and jump up, and Pro 3 says, god damn, he is good. Pro 1 says, I know, let go. Deku room lemon warring. Deku yells, I am coming. 𝗵𝗃 yells, oh f yes, come in me. Deku comes and says, FY, and how did I end up like this? 𝗕𝗫𝗓 says, you're not done yet. Deku sigh and says, okay, let's start. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 room joke laugh and 𝐈𝐧𝐻 says, you're cute. Joke smiles and says, you are to now F me silly. 𝐈𝐧𝐻 smiles and says, Don't mind if I do. 𝐒𝐽𝐽 grabs joke bub and starts to lick her neck. Joke says, "Oh if 𝐒𝐽𝐽 you're good at this." 𝗬𝗧 lay her on her back and says, "I know now, let's see how far you can take it." 𝗬𝗧 is 10-inch at best. Joke says, "Oh yes 𝗬𝗧, tech me how to be a bad girl." 𝗬𝗧 smiles and says, "I would be happy to." In the morning and then for lemon, Gil walk into the kitchen with his gear on and 𝗬𝗧 says, "You going out?" Gil sigh and says, "No coming back." 𝗬𝗧 yells, "You been out all night?" Gil nod and says, "Now can I will get dressed, then we will get going to 𝗲𝗏 Zoo." Deku says, "You have not slept, is that good?" Gil sigh and says, "I will sleep later, you're all here to have fun, not worry about me." 𝗬𝗧 sigh and says, "You hurt anywhere?" Gil sigh then says, "Maybe, I don't know." Joke says, "Okay 𝗬𝗧, tell the kid to get ready, I will make sure he is fine." Gil was about to say something but 𝗬𝗧 cut him off saying, "No it fine, he nit bleeding out like last time." Getting everybody ready and on the bus, Gil says tired, "Now you are going to 𝗲𝗏 Zoo while I sleep somewhere, so don't blow anything or let the animals out." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Please don't do anything dumb because then that is a lot for paperwork for me and poplar more for Gil, so don't if anything up." Denki says, "Hey, it not just me." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Oh I know, it just fun to see you do that." Denki sigh and says, "Of course it is." Gil smiles and says, "Okay, we are here now to have fun." Everyone nod and Gil think, "Okay, time to go." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Okay, let go and walk around the zoo." 𝗕𝗲 says, "Okay, everyone be respectful to the zoo while we are here." Everyone says, "No 𝗕𝗲." 𝗕𝗲 look down and says, "Fine." Everyone to around the zoo. Gil get dressed back into his old clothes and sit on his seat at the entrance for the zoo thinking, what are they planning? 𝗬𝗧 says, "Gil, how was your sleep?" Gil look at him and says, "Funny, anyway we are going back to the hotel." 𝗵𝗔 says, "Aw, can we go to the mall?" Gil sigh and says, "Is that good with everyone?" Everyone says, yes/sure. Gil look at them and says, "Okay, let go." Not going to lie, I am tired as hell. And at the mall, Gil sit in the food court think, "Wow, I am tired as hell." 𝗬𝗧 say, "Hey kid, you good?" Gil nod and say, "Yeah, I am fine sir." 𝗬𝗧 says, "I been talking to Nizu and he want you to come to you. I told the teachers and they fine with it, so what you say?" Goo smiles and says, "I would love to, it just I don't think I am the right person for you, I am a bit too deadly for it." 𝗬𝗧 says, "You can be the killing hero, the Dark Hood, you would be like the Red Hood but for Japan." Gil smiles and says, "Would the class like me?" Thought. 𝗬𝗧 luack a little and says, "Of course they would like you, they might be dumbass but they might dumbass." Gil luack and says, "Don't you need a parent to get in?" Joke sit next to him and says, "That where we come in?" 𝗬𝗧 smiles and say, "Will you be mine and Joke's son?" Gil look confused and says, "You to what, me to be your son?" 𝗬𝗧 and Joke nod. Then 𝗬𝗧 says, "Of course, even your quirk is like mine, so it not that wired." Joke says, "And you both look like you always need sleep." Gil smiles and says, "Well, do I get any siblings?" 𝗬𝗧 says, "Are you counting class 1A? If not, then no." Joke says, "I don't think I can deal with them." 𝗬𝗧 say, "I can't deal with them to it, okay?" Gil smiles and says, "Okay, on will become Gil." 𝗬𝗧. Joke says, "Okay, son, rules, you die for me, or 𝗬𝗧, I will receive you and kill you myself." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Joke, clam down, I am going to turn him and is it going to be hell?" Gil smiles and says, "It on old men." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Old, who you calling old?" Joke luack and Gil says, "You dad." 𝗬𝗧 smiles and say, "You're an 𝗬𝗧, all right, let go. Oh, and you're in UA now if you like it or not." Gil nod and says, "Okay, you think they time is up?" 𝗬𝗧 smiles and says, "Is now let go and get them." On the bus, 𝗬𝗧 says, "I got two thing to says. The first is Gil is coming to you." Everyone was happy. Then 𝗕𝗲 says, "Don't you need your parent to sigh you up?" Gil smiles and says, "That where old men and Joke come in they marking me they son." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Called me old one more time and I will kill you." Gil smiles and says, "Okay dad." 𝗲𝗏 says, "You're part for the dad gang." No 𝗬𝗧. Deku says, "You're a granddad." 𝗬𝗏 smiles and says, "What are we doing?" And "Ow daddy." Deku smiles and says, "I don't know 𝗬𝗏, let's see." Gil says, "Well, we are going back to the hotel, then we are going out to another 5-star place for dinner." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Will you be joining us tonight?" Gil smiles and says, "No, I will be out again." Joke says, "When was the last time you had dinner?" Gil says, "A month ago." Everyone says, "A month?" Gil says, "Yet fine, I actually eat lunch now." 𝗬𝗧 says, "Okay, the hell." Gil says, "Well, my old class would not let me eat lunch, so I just stopped eating for a bit." Denki says, "That if up." 𝗏𝗏 says, "That not cool, dude." Everyone agreed while 𝐒𝐽𝑎 says, somebody is going to die. 𝐒● says, I am with you. 𝐎𝐽 sigh and says, it fine don't worry that is also a reason why I were not sure about going to deku say. It okay no one going to be mean to you anywhere other than one person in 1B but he does not get far. 𝐎𝐽 smiles a bit and say, thank you guys and 𝗏𝗵𝗏 okay don't kill them they not worth it. 𝐒𝐽𝑎 says, but they hurt you. 𝗏 says, and we need to kill them. 𝗬 smiles and says, no they fine we need heroes here even if they bad. 𝗏 says, fine we won't kill them. 𝗧𝗏 says, fine you one of now. 𝐎𝐽 says, okay good now get out and get ready to go we are going soon. After getting ready and back on the bus 𝗧𝗏 says, so son how did you deal with it? 𝗏 says, fine dad don't worry about it. 𝗏 says, what have you been while we have dinner and sleep? 𝗏 says, oh just fight villains and helping people in need. 𝗵𝗏 says, that a lot of work for you don't you think? 𝗧𝗏 says, if I could send you all out like 𝐙 I would but 𝗎𝗓 doesn't let me. 𝗏 says, it fine don't worry about me I've been doing this for years and never got hurt too bad. 𝗏 says, I am not happy about you doing that. 𝗧𝗏 says, yeah I have to agree with her what happened if you get hurt. 𝗏 says happy. I keep fighting until the villain is down or I die. 𝗧𝗏 says, good way to fight but you're my son now so don't do that. 𝗏 says, no promise also we're here have fun. 𝗧𝗏 says, okay 𝗏 be safe tonight. 𝗏 nods and says, I will don't worry. They all leave and 𝗏 think, okay let's see where to go. Inside the 5-star place 𝗵 says, so how is everyone liking Australia so far? Everyone start talking about the time here so far. Then 𝗧𝗏 says, I got a son now and it with 𝗏 my first and only love. 𝗏 blushes and says 𝗧𝗏 you lady men you should act like that more. 𝗧𝗏 says, but by God do I hate the both for them. Everyone laugh and then Deku says, I found out and was my really dad and I got a lovely little daughter and a son-in-law and my girlfriends. 𝗬𝗏 says, I thought I was your daughter. Deku pat her head and says, you are Snowball. 𝗂𝐬𝗓 says, son-in-law who that? Deku smiles and says, you 𝗂𝐬𝗓 I know you two like one another and I accept you marrying my Snowball. 𝗂𝐬𝗓 and 𝗬𝗏 go red but 𝗵 start cry and saying, I going to be it. Great-grandfather. Deku pat him on the back and says, dad they 6 wait until you. 𝗂𝐬𝗓 says, Mr. Deku I don't know what you are saying. Deku turned to 𝗂𝐬𝗓 and 𝗬𝗏 then says, oh you can have 𝐻𝐻 in your first year of UA if you what but you are not getting married until after you. 𝗬𝗏 says blushing madly, dad stop it. You're being wired and look at 𝗂𝐬𝗓. 𝗂𝐬𝗓 red on the ground. Deku says, oh carp 𝗂𝐬𝗓 speak to me. 𝗂𝐬𝗓 says, you think me and 𝗬𝗏 should be together. 𝗬𝗏 says, 𝗂𝗓 not helping. 𝗂𝗓 says, but 𝗬𝗏 you cute and nice. 𝗬𝗏 freezes and turn red then yells, well you're hot as F. Everyone go quiet and 𝗬𝗏 think for a moment. Deku look at her and says, what did you says? 𝗬𝗏 hides and think, oh he is his mother's alright. 𝗬𝗏 says, that 𝗂𝗓 is hot a frick. Deku nod and says, who told you those words? 𝗬𝗏 says scared, Bakugo. Deku nod and 𝗧𝗏 says, don't kill him. Deku look at 𝗧𝗏 with the don't test me look and 𝗧𝗏 just nod thinking, nope not today world. Deku says, okay 𝗬𝗏 we don't use those words and when we get back I am making sure Bakugo doesn't say said words in front for you. One with 𝗏 at the lad. 𝗏 look at the Nomu and think, what are they planning? Then he hear, Toga what do you mean you don't know where they are or what they planning? Toga yells, don't test me Shigaraki. They not on a plan they doing whatever they what when they what? Shigaraki yells, I don't care what about you 𝗧𝗏 you done nothing. 𝗧𝗏 yells, don't F with me finding villains here is harder than you think. Kurohige says, everyone clam down they hear. The men says, welcome thank you for coming and thank you for let me make the most powerful Nomu ever with the greatest villain in one Nomu we can rule the world. Shigaraki says, and when we do I what to kill class 1A myself do I make myself. Clear Clint. Clint says, of course me and Rose here have business to attend. 𝗬𝗏 says, wasn't they like 10 for you in the hero unit? Rose says, they was but as you can see they body are now in tubes ready to become a Nomu. Toga says, so that mean the other are overhaul? Shigaraki, Stain and muscular. Clint says, yes and the person in the middle Mineta he is important for this. Rose grab a bottle and start make it drinks for everyone. After everyone got a drink Clint rise his glass and yells, to rule it the world. They all yells, to ruling the world. Gil drop down and says, not a big fan for the plan. Clint yells, 𝗕𝗏 guards kill him. Rose says, we need to go. Clint he what us dead. Shigaraki says, to we got him. Clint says, don't take him lightly kill him if you get the chase. They nod and Gil says, so you're the LV wow you guys look at you. Toga says, hey I look good. Gil says, I would but the whole Yandere kind turn me off. Shigaraki says, kill him please. Gil pull out his gun. And shoot Kurohige in the helmet. Not a helmet, I know it, like a neck thing. Dabi turn to burn him. Gil move out of the fire, but Toga stabs him in the back 5 times. Then Shigaraki place his head on his helmet and it start to decay, but Gil break free. But Dabi get a good shot for fire on him and Gil start to burn. He think, I can't win like this, might as well leave them my gift. Turn shot Dabi in the legs and Toga in the arm, then Shigaraki in the gut, saying, we will see one another later. Plus back at the hotel in Aizawa room, Joke says, I am happy we adopted Gil. Aizawa kiss her on the head and says, meet a Joke. Then they hear a crash through the window and walk out to see recap. Then they hear a crash through the window and walk out to see Gil in pure bad, and Aizawa yells, Gil my god. Gil breath heavy saying, they hear, Joke yells, Gil my god, you need to go to the hospital now. Gil get up and says, no, not when they hear. Everyone run in and they see Gil. Then M says, what happed? Gil take off Haft for his helmet and says, they a change for plan, pack up, we are going to the west. Aizawa says, we need to heal him. How? Momo make a first aid and Aizawa wrapping up, and Deku says, worried, did the hero unit do this? Gil sigh and says, no, don't worry, just get ready. Aizawa says, tell us what going on, son. Gil slam his fists on a table then yells, the OV are here, happy now. Everyone get worried. Then Gil breathes and says, sorry, it's just my job to make sure you're now here, but the LOV are here now, so the whole F plan is F. Says, you can't beat them yourself, they too powerful. Aizawa says, he right, you're going to die, look at you. Gil sigh and says, I know it, more worse than just the LOV and the HU, they making the most powerful Nomo. The one at the USJ is nothing to what this one is going to be. Everyone gets scared and Aizawa says, okay, how bad we talking? Gil sigh and says, the people from the HU, AFO, Overhaul, Shigaraki, Stain and Muscular, and the one they putting all they quicks into Mineta. Aizawa says, and no. Everyone's scared and work. Joke says, okay, one thing at a time. Gil, you need to be healed more, then we will talk about it. Gil sigh and says, no, I find you all need to back to Japan now. Aizawa says, what about you? Gil sigh and say, making sure you get out on time. Deku says, we are not leaving. Gil sigh and says, but you are. If there was any LOV stuff going on you would be sent home. Nizu on a phone that M called on, this is Tour, sadly you all need to coming back by tomorrow afternoon. Gil smiles and says, I will be fine, I will come once it all done. Aizawa says, you can't do it by yourself. Joke says, worried, come with us please. Gil look down and says, no can do, I have a mission I need to do, if that mean I die then I die. Aizawa says, don't act like death is nothing, you need to come with us. Nizu says, no Aizawa. Aizawa yells, what do you mean no? Nizu says, I know this is going to be hard to hear, but the most important thing is to back you all back. Gil sigh and says, and I need to hold them off until you're all ready. Joke says, you will die. Gil smiles and says, that the plan? Deku says, then I'm staying with you. Nizu says, no, they what you the most. Gil says, he right, they what you, I am just going to be live meat. M says, that not a good plan. Gil says, yes it is, they what all for you, they don't what me, but I am a good way to hold them off. Aizawa says, look at what they did that to you tonight. Gil says, I am ready now. Joke says, you can't with that Nomu. Gil says, they not going to use the Nomu on me, I think it a gift for Deku. Deku says, then we stay and fight. Nizu says, no you don't stay, you all come back and set up a line. Gil says, you all don't know the place like me. Kree says, we can't leave you bro. Denki says, yeah we can't leave you here to die. Aizawa says, no they right, but Gil you better be right behind us when you are done. Joke says, if I look on the news to see you dead I am coming to hell to kill you again. Says, okay when do we leave? Nizu says, the first you can all leave is tomorrow afternoon. Gil nod and says, okay pack up while I get a new mask. They all leave. Aizawa says, son please come with us. Gil says, it fine dad I got this. Joke says, Gil please be safe. Gil hug both for them and says, I will be. In the morning they all wake up and get on the bus. Gil smiles then says, okay we are going to the Sydney Opera House, we will be looking around then back to the hotel, then you all go home. Am sigh and says, we know the plan, that why we are worried. Gil smiles and says, don't worry I got this. Deku says, someone need to stay. Gil smiles and says, if anyone was it not you or any for the kid. Aizawa says, if one for you aren't on that plane when it take off I will get Gil to throw you to us. Joke says, he joking you're joking right. Gil smiles and says, anyway we are here. Denki says, wow that is something. Gil says, yet if wired to look at. Joke hit him over the head and says, "No swearing." They walk in and the front office lady says, "Oh hello, welcome everyone, nice to see you." Gil says, "Hello, stage for I believe." Denki says, "Wow, that is something." Gil says, "Yet if wired to look at." Joke hit him over the head and says, "No swearing." They walk in and the front office lady says, "Oh hello, welcome everyone, nice to see you." Gil says, "Hello, stage for I believe." The lady nod and, "Yes, the movie will start soon and food will come during the movie." They nod and Gil says, "Okay, room 4, let go." They all walk away and the lady walk into the back office and then to Toga, who says, "This is not right, they kids." 𝗬𝗵𝗆 says, "I know, Toga, but what are we going to do?" Toga says, "Save the kid and fight Shigaraki." 𝗬𝗵𝗆 smiles and says, "Sounds like a plan, let get ready." Gil walk in and says, "Welcome, some heroes are coming to talk to all for you." Gil walk in and says, "Welcome, some heroes are coming to talk to all for you, not my pick." Deku says, "Wow, this place is amazing." Gil smiles and says, "You can talk until they come." Pull Gil aside and says, "What is your plan?" Aizawa says, "We need to know." Gil sigh and says, "Don't worry, I got it." Tiger says, "We can fight with you, Gil, let us help you." Gil smiles and says, "I got this, you all need to go home." And did Ragdoll bring her guns? Tiger nod and says, "Yes, she did, just to be safe." Gil says, "Good, did you?" Says, "Of course I did." Gil says, "Good, and Dad, do you have your capturing weapon?" Aizawa says, "Of course I did." Gil nod and says, "Okay, good, I guess all the pro got they stuff." They all nod and walk back and then Deku asks, "What heroes are coming?" Gil says, "Like 5, I don't know who they are." 𝗓𝗏 says, "That's so cool, dude." Gil says, "Let me shoot in please." Joke says, "Did you being guns?" Gil says, "Like I am not going to being my guns, mum. After what happened last night, I kind want them with me at all times." Joke says, "You have guns on you, Gil, what if a kid got one?" Gil smiles and says, "I would tech the how to use a gun if I gave them one." Joke yell, "You're not giving guns to Eri or Koda." Aizawa laughing and Gil says, "Why, better to learn young than later." Joke says, "They F6. Gil says, "6, okay, Eri, Koda, here is my guns, now see the." Joke yells, "Tech them how to use that gun, I am suffering that gun somewhere." Gil wisps, "We will do this later." Aizawa laughing says, "Oh my god, this is good." Joke says, "You should be helping me, not laughing your butt off." Aizawa says, "Oh no, that was too funny to help." Joke says, "I am so going to kill you later." Gil says, "Imagine if we were all villains." Deku says, "Why?" Gil says, "No, hear me out, it would be like another world from ours where we all became villains instead for heroes." Aizawa says, "What the hell are you talking about?" Momo says, "Like the multiverse where we became villains, or like if the girls were boy and the boys were girls." Gil says, "Yes, that, like, imagine, I would hate to see that world." Aizawa says, "Why?" Gil says, "Oh, you know, Deku being the criminal mastermind, 𝗧𝗏 as a drag dealer, 𝗎𝗏𝗏 as a killer." Deku says, "Why am I the mastermind?" Gil says, "If you weren't a hero, the villains would be carping themselves with fear from you alone, and that not even the rest of class wanna." Aizawa says, "What about the teachers?" Gil smiles and says, "Well, you would be teching them, or you work for Deku." Says, "I mean, I could see it." Gu smiles and says, "And be a mentor because you would be the #1 villain." Says, "What?" Dek says, "But who would be the #1 hero then?" Gil smiles and says, "If you're the villain would be the heroes." Think all of one. Aizawa says, "So the love would be class 1A then?" Gil says, "Yes, they would be feel sorry for then because they need to deal with you as villains and heroes in 2 different worlds." Deku says, "Wow, that's scary to think about us being villains." 𝗓𝗏 says, "Yeah, it is, dude." Denki says, "Yeah, good thing the love have not attacked yet." Aizawa says, "Denki, I swear to God, if you don't shut up, I will shoot you." Joke says, "He won't shoot you, right, Aizawa? You won't shoot him." Aizawa says, "If I had a gun, I would shoot him, but as you can see, there is not a hole in Denki yet." Deku says, "No one is shooting Denki." Gil think, "This isn't right, the heroes should be here by now, and there is no villain reports, surely that not right, they have to be one unless." Gil look around and to see red light everywhere and then hear a ticking noise and Aizawa says, "You good, Gil?" Gil yells, "Get the F down now, they bomb everywhere, down now." Everyone get down, then hear explosions and people got blown into walk and injuring many. Gil pick up Deku and Aizawa up saying, "Deh." Aizawa help the injured Deku make a hole in the wall up the back. "I will hold them off." Deku look out over a sea for villains and Deku says, "You can't take on that many villains." Gil says, "Get everyone the F out for here, forget about me." Aizawa go. Deku says, "B." But Aizawa cut him off by saying, "I will do, Gil," and Deku go help, "He got this, we will see him later, won't we?" Gil Gil nod and says, yeah, something like that, but I have bad people to kill, so maximum effort. Everything freezes and dekuwhatif then says, he stole my F line. Dekuwhatif and everything go back, and 𝐒𝐬𝐽 says, what the F does that mean, but we need to go now. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 to help injure people. Then Gil smiles and put his new helmet on and pulling out his gun. Helmet look like this, helmet look like this, not my pick. Everyone is going to the exit while Ragdoll, Midnight, Joke and 𝐒𝐬𝐽 are shooting at the villains while the rest for the pros are using the quirk. Then they hear a voice. Why hello heroes, we are here to only 2 people, and after that we can let you rest for you free. Deku drop down and yells, if you want me come and get it. Gil says, no, I got them, get everyone out. Deku says, but everyone is doing fine. Gil start to shoot villains and say, just go, I got them for now, we can't wait. Yells, my boy, we need to go now. Deku yells, but he need help. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 yells, help by getting everyone out for here. Deku got it. Deku run up and 𝐒𝐬𝐽 says, okay, that everyone let roll out. Everyone walk through the hole. When they got out, Deku punch to close the exit and enter. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 say, where is Deku? Everyone look around and says, back in they, and he got rid for the exit and enter. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 says, no, 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 the ambulance and police. With pro come to where they are at, then says, we need to get back in. Gil think, okay, everyone gone, just me the villains. Great. Shigaraki says, so when I am done with you the class dies. Gil says, hell if I don't do it without a fight. The Shigaraki says, I was hoping you would says Nomu kill him, them a 10-arm and 10-foot tall them. Then Nomu let out a scream. Deku drop down and yells, it me, you what leave him out for this, you what me. Shigaraki says, Nomu kill the 2 for them. Gil yells, need to go now. Gil start shooting at the villains while Deku says, I can't leave you here. Gil says, you are go now, they need you in Japan. Deku says, I will not leave you here to die. Gil reloads and says, get out for here, I am going to use my full power and you need yours for Japan. 𝐕 says, child, can we hurry this up? Deku says in an angry one, you. 𝐕 says, you think I am going to fight you in this form? Shigaraki, come here. Shigaraki says, yes, mater, I am readying. Deku run to stop 𝐕 and Shigaraki. Then Shigaraki yells, Nomu stop him. Gil shoot the Nomu and says, fine, stop them, I got this. 𝐕 place his hand on Shigaraki and red energy start coming off both for them, and Deku yells, 𝐕 drop, and Shigaraki says, rest or I will finish what you stated. Deku look down and say, one of all 1,000,000%. Gil look at Deku and says, it's Satan, give me hell. Deku and Gil full on power up. Deku looking like when he saved Eri, but white hair, and Deku turn into a demon yelling, take me on, I am Satan. Shigaraki yell, Nomu kill him, I will take care for the Bart. Deku and Shigaraki starts to punching each one another like they know tomorrow. The Nomu scream at Gil, and Gil out his guns away, then pull out his scythe which is now on black fire. The Nomu throws a perch, but Gil grab it and cut one for the Nomu hands off, which regrows, but Gil run the Nomu arm but get grabbed by the Nomu and yells, Deku kill him already. Deku and Shigaraki stop, and Toga says, Shiggy, we should stop, they going to win. 𝗲𝗵𝗵 says, she right, for once we need to go. Shigaraki says, no, they die now. 𝗲𝗵𝗵 and Toga nod, then try to attack him, but as soon as Shigaraki see this, punch Toga and 𝗲𝗵𝗵 in the head, knocking them out. Then Deku says, come on Shigaraki, attack me. Deku and Shigaraki start punching one another like no tomorrow while Gil is get punched into the ground multiple time. Then Gil stop a punch and says, you are dead. Gil start growing, becoming same size as the Nomu that start to punch at Gil that just dropped. The Nomu shake the ground. Gil think, I need the hell gates, but I need to get Deku out for here first. Deku is look mess up, and Deku says, get out for here now. Deku says, all for 19,000,000%. Deku hair is now gray. Shigaraki says, let do this. Deku start to punch Shigaraki, and Gil think, he going to die, I need to Nomu to go now. Gil pick up the Nomu and break it back, then he garb Nomu leg and start to spin it around and throw it so hard it go into space. Everyone see this, and says, was that Nomu? 𝐒𝐬𝐽 says, it must be. Deku says in a tired tone, deal with the rest. Gil says, no papping, get out now. Deku says, no, I got it. Gil yells, no, you're going to die. Deku says, no, I got this. Gil sigh and says, sorry. Gil grab Deku, Toga and 𝗲𝗵𝗵, then throw them all outside. They all land outside, and Deku get up and says, no, I need to help. Deku go to run back in, but a red barrier go around the whole building, and Deku says, no, no, no. Gil. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 says, what is he doing? Deku look up and says, fighting Shigaraki who have more power than before. 𝗵 says, you don't mean, Deku nod and says, yeah him. 𝗵 says, oh no, back inside 𝐔𝐬𝐽 back down to regular size and says, where is the hero unit? Behind 𝐔𝐬𝐽, right here. 𝐔𝐬𝐽 quick shoot her in the head and says, one more to go. The leader says, that you do. 𝐔𝐬𝐽 turn around and says, now let me kill you so we can finish this already. The leader says, not happening, you are die here. 𝐔𝐬𝐽 says, then I die. With all for you and here with me. Shigaraki says, not happening kid. 𝐔𝐬𝐽 says, I got rid for your Nomu, I can get rid for all you. Shigaraki says, you think that was the Nomu that was a weaker vision for you, but it seem I need the death Nomu. Kurojari brings it here. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 says, F this, shoot the leader 12 times and reloads and says, okay now the league. Outside Aizawa says, you need to go hospital now Deku. Deku get up and says, no he going to die and they says, you have pushed yourself too far. My boy. Deku smiles and say, I have not pushed myself enough, don't worry I got this, I just need this stuff to move so I can get in. Everyone look at the bright red stuff and Aizawa says, who know what doing this though? Inside 𝐔𝐽𝐽 look and says, let go. Shigaraki says, okay your death wish. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 put up his guns but Shigaraki place both hands on the gun and they start to decay. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 drop his guns and pull out his scythe which Shigaraki grabs the scythe and say, you don't have you weapons no. What will you do? 𝐔𝐽𝐽 start to go black and his eyes go red and says, now you die. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 punch Shigaraki in the face and rids. Shigaraki says, where the Nomu? Kurojari says, right here. The Nomu drop down and scream. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 says, hello big boy. The Nomu is 50 foot tall and have 20 arms. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 put up his hands and a red glow start coming off him. Shigaraki says, Nomu kill him. Outside Toga says, that Nomu that is in space, that was not the Nomu, that was a weaker one. Deku says, but he got beaten up by that one. If they all hear the scream and Deku says, no. The hell gate fall down and Deku run in and him yells, no. Aizawa says, get back here, you're in now place to fight. Deku drop down and says, okay you die here Shigaraki now. Shigaraki says, oh god the child is here. Deku yells, 1 for all 10 billion% spirit quirks. Spirit is all for one user's quirks which were Nanasai and says, well the first one is float, my quirk it is simple you float. Deku says wired out, I get float, 6 user. Second is Grim Reaper, it makes someone feel death but they don't die. Deku glups and says, Grim Reaper, 5 user. Says, Fireball, I can make fire in my hand and send it out. Deku says still confused, Fireball, for user says happily, I have anger issues, it make you angry but you don't lose you stamina. Deku worrying, anger issues. Glups and says, well the last one. 3 user says, oh yes my quirk I can turn into a wolf and it is called werewolf. Deku smiles and says, and werewolf. Deku start to float and make fire on his hands while getting more angry and Grim Reaper is on, he just need to touch them and werewolf is giving him more strength and better hearing. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 yells, you need to go now. Shigaraki start to us all his quirks in his body says, shut up you Nomu kill him already. Deku and Shigaraki start punching one another. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 says, F it hell scythe. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 hold out his arm and the ground start to crack, then it glow red as a pool start to come out and 𝐔𝐽𝑽 grab it and the Nomu scream at his and throw a punch at 𝐔𝐽𝑽 who block it with the little bit for pole, then he pull the rest out and it look like this. Deku start to float and make fire on his hands while getting more angry and Grim Reaper is on, he just need to touch them and werewolf is giving him more strength and better hearing. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 yells, you need to go now. Shigaraki start to us all his quirk not my pick. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 says, you can die now. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 swing his scythe, then the Nomu get cut in half, then 𝐔𝐽𝑽 swing his is 100 more times cut the Nomu in the little prices while Deku is punching Shigaraki while Shigaraki is using all his quirks but still is getting pushed back by the force for Deku. Shigaraki yells, Nomu kill him. Hearings nothing back. Shigaraki yells, Nomu kill him now. Deku says, there is no Nomu left. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 killed it. Shigaraki says, how can a nobody do that? Deku says, ask that yourself. Shigaraki says, no, this can't be happening, I have all the power in the world I and still lose. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 yells, I got this, get out for here. Deku it just him now. Deku says, I am not leaving you here. Deku look at 𝐔𝐽𝑽 and Shigaraki take his chance to touch Deku but 𝐔𝐽𝑽 teleports in front for Shigaraki and 𝐔𝐽𝑽 let Shigaraki touch him and Deku yells, 𝐔𝐽𝑽 smiles and says, it okay, I think everything will be fine. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 cut Shigaraki in half with his scythe and Deku says, take it slow, you're dying. 𝐔𝐽𝑽 still standing says, it fine hell guns. Gil put his scythe on his back, then 2 guns pop into his hands and Deku says, "Why did you get them? 2 for them and not my pick, 2 for them and not my pick." Gil walk over to Shigaraki body and says, "See you in hell." Then 8 shots goes off and Deku says, "He dead, let him rest." Gil smiles and says, "Do you have a mask I can use?" Deku says, "Nope, don't have one." Gil says, "Hell mask." Gil put his guns away and a mask pop in his hands and he says, "Well, I am ready, you good?" Gil walk over to Shigaraki body and says, "See you in hell." Then 8 shots goes off and Deku says, "He dead, let him rest." Gil smiles and says, "Do you have a mask I can use?" Deku says, "Nope, don't have one." Gil says, "Hell mask." Gil put his guns away and a not my pick. Deku powers down and says, "I am fine but you're in bad shape." Gil put on the mask and says, "Let go." Deku drop and Gil says, "Deku, you good?" Deku nod and says, "I am fine, just tired from using that much power." Gil says, "Can you walk?" Deku nod and says, "Let do this." They walk out and Deku says, "It okay now, the hero unit and the League for Villains is now dead. Police, FBI, the army and the pro run in to see the damage." Gil says, "They in hell now, may they rest." Aizawa says, "Is that what I think it is?" Gil look down and says, "Oh, that it no thee." Gil drop and Deku yells, "Gil." Then Deku pie out and says, "My boy." Deku and Gil get rushed to the hospital and are both placed in a medical coma. They both come out 4 hours later and are placed on 24-hour watch to 1-hour checkups, and Inko flight over to see Deku and sit next to his bed saying, "You did good, kid, you did good." While Joke and Aizawa sit next to Gil bed while the doctor says, "He is lucky to be alive, his body is decaying at a slow rate, but it is decaying nonetheless. He already hit his heart, he doesn't have long to live. I am sorry." Aizawa says, "We understand. Is it okay if we watch over him for now?" The doctor says, "Of course it is." The doctor leaves and Joke start to cry. Then Aizawa says, "You better life, son, I can't lose you." Joke still crying while Aizawa start to try up saying, "You hear me, don't you die on me, damn it." Aizawa now hugging a crying Joke while Joke says, "No, this can't happen." Aizawa says, "Issy should okay sleep." While in Deku room, says, "Come on, you got this, son, I know you will make it." The doctor walk in and says, "Well, they good new and bad new, which would you like first?" Says, "I would like the bad new first." The doctor says, "Gil is dying." Says, "Oh no, Gil, okay, the good news now, doc." The doctor says, "He will make a full recovery, he will just need time to gain his energy back and some broken bones, but nothing too bad." Says, "Thank you, doctor." The doctor walk out for the room and walk out to see everybody. They and Mina yells, "Is he okay?" Says, "Fine, just in medicine coma. I will tell everyone when he wake up. For the meantime, go back to the hotel." Jiro says, "How is Gil? He was in they for a long time." Look down and says, "I shouldn't say." They all say, "No dose that mean." Mirko says, "Come on, kid, let go back to the hotel." Mirio says, "Come on, Eri, we will see Mr. Deku later." Says, "Bye, Daddy." Eri says, "Bye, Daddy." They all get on the bus and Kree says, "You don't think Kree get cut for by midnight?" Who says, "Don't finish that please, not in front for the pro or people with kid." Denki says, "Yeah, but we should do something for he beefo." Mirko says, "Finish, I dare you, and I will break you spine." Midnight says, "We will let Aizawa and Joke talk about when they more ready. Coming from us is nothing, they are the ones being informed about Gil, not us." Zero says, "But we heard." Says to Midnight says, "Drop it now, all for you." Jiro says, "What the big deal?" Mirko says, "It because we're pro heroes and now 2 heroes in tearing are in medical comas." Midnight says, "And that they kids while we are adults." Kree says, "Yeah, but Deku always did this." Midnight says, "Yeah, well, the teaching stuff hated it because he almost died multiple time and it is his first year for training to be a hero." He lady sigh and says, "I agree, you're all kid fighting the fight that we are meant to fight." Denki says, "That what heroes do, fight so overs don't." Midnight says, "You a child fight villains who will kill you if they are given the chance." Mirko says, "And Gil, he was not even a part for UA or even Japan, and he need to fight the Japan villains. Now look at where he is." Midnight says, "So when I says drop it, drop it." The bus ride back to the hotel was quite in Deku head. Nana says, "Good one, kid, you tarp us in you mind." Deku says, "Yeah, sorry about that, one user. It okay, but Illo is dead now. You will keep this power. If they is a greater villain, you can kill him till you will live. But Gil, he dying right now. I am sorry." Deku says, No, not Gil, he did so much." Nana says, "It okay, kid, he will live happy in hell with his family." In Gil head, Gil says, "So I finally die about time." Satan says, "Yeah, kid, sorry about it, but you're all free now. You did good." Gil smiles and says, I know I did good, let me rest now. Satan says, I could let you die or let you live. Gil says, I can live this. Satan says, if you choose to live you will. Gil says, can I go and see Deku first? Satan smiles and says, of course. A ring go around Gil feet and he get teleported into Deku mind with Nana saying, oh, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 you're here now. Deku run to Gil and hug him saying, I thought you died. Gil says, not just yet, I can live if I what I think I should and I think you do. Deku says, not for me but for 𝐈𝐧𝐿 and 𝗲𝗂, they deserve to be happy. Gil smiles and says, see you soon then. Satan back to my mind. Out in the real world 𝐈𝐧𝐿 is still up watching Gil with 𝗲𝗂 on he lap and walk in then says, can I talk to you outside? 𝐈𝐧𝐿 nod and place 𝗲𝗂 head light then walk out with which then says, I am sorry 𝐈𝐧𝐿. 𝐈𝐧𝐿 says, it not your fault and I am sorry about Deku. Says, Deku he is fine until his mother get here but you two just got Gil now he dying. 𝐈𝐧𝐿 nod and says, yeah I know that what pissing me off. Says, if need help after I can always help. 𝐈𝐧𝐿 says, thank you you better go back to Deku now. Nod and walk off then 𝐈𝐧𝐿 walk back into the room and says, 𝗕𝗃 says, language. 𝐈𝐧𝐿 sit down and says, I know so how long do you think we have? 𝗲𝗂 says, I think tomorrow afternoon. 𝐈𝐧𝐿 says, yeah but you need sleep. 𝗲𝗂 come on. 𝗲𝗂 lay down and says, night 𝐈𝐧𝗿. 𝐈𝐧𝗿 and 𝗲𝗂 wake up and see Gil in bed then 𝐈𝐧𝗿 says, how did you sleep 𝗲𝗂? 𝗲𝗂 smiles and says, fine how about you? 𝐈𝐧𝗿 says, yeah not too bad. Gil says, yeah I didn't sleep too bad myself. 𝐈𝗿𝗿 and 𝗲𝗂 yells, you're alive and not in a coma. Gil turn his head and says, well I am alive but not without a price. They see Gil eye and it all black and 𝗲𝗂 says, your eye. Gil says, oh don't worry it fine I can still see out for it. 𝐈𝗿𝗿 says, yeah but why is your eye like that now? Gil smiles and says, I somewhat made a deal with Satan and he took my eye. 𝗲𝗂 says, you made a deal with King for hell. Satan teleports next to 𝗲𝗂 and 𝐈𝗿𝗿 and says, yes he did. 𝗍𝗿 says, oh 𝗲𝗂 yells, Gil is he here to kill us? Gil smiles and says, what no he in my head most for the time. 𝗍𝗿 says, so you saved my son. Satan says, well I own him a lot. 𝗲𝗂 says, why do you own Satan? Gil says, a lot for 𝐒𝐻𝗵𝗲 went to hell for a bit and come back with Satan powers after that. 𝗍𝗿 and 𝗲𝗂 yells, you been to hello? Satan says, yeah anyway have fun I got things to do. Satan goes back into Gil mind and Gil says, that the voice in my head. 𝗍𝗿 says, okay what are the doctors going to think you're meant to be dying? The doctor walk in and says, I am here to check up on what the hell how are you alive these kid? 𝗍𝗿 confused says, what? The doctor says, the other in Deku he already awake he should be out for a week and now Gil should be dead right now but no he alive with a whole black eye. Gil says, what can I says hell is well one hell for a place. The doctor walk out saying, I quite. 𝗍𝗿 says, okay you should stop this because everyone think you're dying right now. Gil says, well better go and tell them I am not dead. With and Deku wake up and says, dad what going on? Says, you're up already I thought you would be asleep for a bit. Deku says, yeah I know I keep werewolf on while I was in the coma make my healing faster. Says, oh yeah forgot about that but you will be fine until you mother get here. The door get kicked down and 𝗏𝗏 says, why would that be? Says, 𝗏𝗏 honey how are you? 𝗏𝗏 says, shut up I need to talk to my son. Shut the hell up and 𝗏𝗏 walk over to Deku and says, now you about to have you ear talk off do you understand? Deku nod and says, yes mum I understand and get some sleeping gas. 𝗏𝗏 says, get that gas I will kill you. 2 hours later for 𝗏𝗏 talk Deku and ear off. Deku says, sorry mum. 𝗏𝗏 says, dame right you need to be sorry. Says, you done now honey? 𝗏𝗏 says, yes now. Start to cry and Deku says, it okay mum I lived. Says, okay 𝗏𝗏 let go and get lunch. 𝗏𝗏 nod and they both leave with 𝗍𝗿. 𝗍𝗿 get off the phone and sigh then says, okay that done now. 𝗲𝗂 says, what do you want for lunch? Gil says, oh a burger. 𝗍𝗿 says, okay to easy. Let go. With the class midnight get off the phone and says, okay everyone that was 𝗍𝗿 and Gil lived but he was meant to die he just cheated death in a way with Satan. Denki says, I am sorry what? Midnight says, he will be back tomorrow don't worry. Mina says, already? Midnight says, don't ask I don't know. Mirko says, anyway let pack up we are ready to go home tomorrow night. Everyone says, okay let go. 4 years later one Deku walk onto a stage and says, thank you all for make me the number one. hero and the hope for the world, everyone cheers and Deku says, I have done a lot even when I was in school. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 hated it. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 yells out, yes I did and I still do. Deku says, but thank you 𝗧𝗏 for being the best teacher even if you're in but. Class 1A laugh and even 𝗧𝗏 laugh a little bit. Then Deku says, also thanks to my mum, she was there for me though thick and thin. 𝐭𝐸 start crying and Deku says, and also crying in our family is normal, but I would like to thank class 1A for being the best class ever even when PS's off 𝗧𝗏 back in our 1 year, and right now you guys are some for the best. But last but not least I would like to thank all my girlfriend helping me with injuries on the field and well everything really, but could I ask them all to get up? The girls confused but get up on the stage in a line and Deku get on one knee and says, you all me the happiest man in the world, so I would like to ask you all. Deku pull out a big box and it open with a lot for rings. Then Gil yells, he wanna F is what he's saying. Deku yells, Gil I will kill you, so shut up and will you all marry me? All the girls yells, yes I do. The girls jump on Deku and Gil says, not in front for people please. Joke hit him over the head that says, shut the hell up. 𝗧𝗏 says, no he fine, let he sass the 𝗧𝗏 out for him. Everyone cheers and claps with this Deku and the girls get up and Deku says, thank you everyone, and can all the boys from class 1A, 𝗧𝗏, Hawks, Tiger and him come out? They all come out and Deku says, you are all my best mans. 𝗧𝗏 says, oh of course I am one. Joke yells, shut the hell up 𝗧𝗏 and be happy you got a job. The girls, the older girls, yell out, you're like our second mum. Joke get you but up here. Joke cry a little and get out and says, you see me as a mum? Deku says, yeah when we found out you and 𝗧𝗏 were a thing we actually saw you as a school mum. Joke crying from happiness. 𝗧𝗏 pat her on the back saying, it okay Joke, you can feel how I do all the time now. Deku smiles and says, picture time. A flash goes off and 6 months later Deku in a suit saying, how do I look? Shoto says, fine let go. 𝗧𝗏 says, you look okay. Kid they all wait for you. 𝗕𝗏 says, you look great son, go out there and kill them. Deku look around and says, where Gil? 𝗧𝗏 says, marketing sure they nothing wrong. Deku says, okay for the rest. 𝗕𝗏 says, making sure everything is okay. Deku says, isn't that the same as Gil? 𝗧𝗏 says, no Gil is checking for bomb and villains. Deku says, what? 𝗧𝗏 says, don't worry he ready. 𝗕𝗏 says, yeah he was in his suit. Deku says, okay that good then. Shoto says, I just saw him in army gear, is that a issue? 𝗧𝗏 says, that is his suit don't worry. Deku yells, what? Gil walk in with army gear and says, okay they not bombs or villains near. Deku says, wear your suit Gil. Gil says, on me. Deku says, you're not wearing army gear to my wedding Gil. Gil sigh and says, I am not it under the army gear. Deku breath Harvey and says, that how you kill me Gil? Gil take off his army gear and says, yeah I am only being one gun to the wedding. Deku says, don't worry about the gun, no one attack the wedding. 𝗕𝗏 says, you are the #1 hero so they might. Shoto says, and they love ones here. 𝗧𝗏 says, yeah they have a point. Deku says, it is a wedding for pro heroes, they heroes everywhere so it nothing to worry about. Gil say, anyways time to go. Deku says, yeah let go and Gil you got you lines. Gil says, lines no it call pulling a Gil. At the wedding Deku walk down the middle with 𝗕𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏 with Gil up the top. Then Gil says, we are here today because for love, burning raw passionate love, just like they see. I should know I spent 2 years next to Deku room, but anyway Deku do you take all for these girl as your wives? Deku says, yes I do. Gil smiles and says, and you all the girls take Deku as they husband so they can have the hot rosy that did every night for 2 years that I know of. All the girls says, yes we do. Gil yells, I now give you the power to be husband and wifes, you my now kiss Deku. This might be a bit so 𝗧𝗏 get make something to drink and eat. The girls walk over and kiss Deku, then someone jump through the window and yells, I am here to kill Deku the #1 hero. Gil gown wings and horns then yells, burn in hell. 8 shots goes off and Gil turn around and says, okay let continue. Deku says, of course you kill someone but he did F up my wedding. Gil says, yeah I know anyways we done now. Deku says, let have some fun now. 6 years later one Deku walk into a room and says, welcome everyone, thank you for all coming. As we all know it been 10 years since we all be to Australia where we met Gil. 𝗧𝗏 and Joke adopted Gil. Started dating all my wonderful wives and the love was defeated so let drink. Everyone cheers and Deku jump down and everyone start to talk to one another and Deku think, I came a long way. I was quickless buelled and had no friends. Now I am the #1 hero. Stop bullies and villains and all the friends in the world. Life is good. I think I made a different and that all I wanted in life to make a different.